All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 5 o'clock. We will call this work session of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all council members are present. We will roll right into our work session agenda, which all of you should have a copy of. Jonathan, if you could give us an update on our Q3 goals.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We have we're still on track with our Q3 goals. The one that we're running into an issue with right now is on the pickleball courts and getting an accurate cost estimate. We've reached out, or Billy Powell has reached out to several firms to come down and give us an estimate, and they need to be on site to do that. And they're apparently, pickleball is a very popular sport and very, very busy. So we're trying to nail down some dates to do that. I suspect we just don't have a date, so I can't tell you if we're on track on that one or not, but we're trying. And then Barry Mott will later in the work session give you kind of an update on engineering fees, sewer rates, sanitation, all those kind of things that you asked for. And that's also one of your Q3 goals. So hopefully after tonight, that one will be complete. And then we'll just need to know kind of what the council would like to do based on his recommendations. With that, everything else is kind of on track to get done in this quarter. I don't see any other issues.
On the pickleball courts, part of that goal was to have a site selected. Y'all feel like you're still moving down the same path on the site? So
we have, and we've heard from a couple of people that thought that the winds at the site. So just so we're talking about the same thing, I think what we talked about was getting an agreement with the Enterprise State Community College for the site of the old tennis courts. It turns out that the tennis courts are beyond repair. The slab itself is, but the site prep that's already done there would save hundreds of thousands of dollars because you can just pour another slab on the compacted dirt. And so that being said, that seems to be the most cost advantageous solution for the city to explore at this time. So that's the site that we're pursuing when we're talking about getting consultants down here to look at what that is. We have an estimate right now of about $50,000 per court, but that's a verbal estimate without going out and seeing the site. That would include lighting, nets and other fencing around the
windscreen on the fencing. Yes,
potentially. That, like I said, those are just the concerns that we had of two people that called in. But we're investigating whether or not that's accurate. We just don't know.
Okay. Any other questions on our Q3 goals? All right, we will move on to review tonight's agenda. Any changes from what was sent out last week? So we've all of you should have gotten a copy of this agenda on Friday. So Beverly says it's the same thing we got. So we'll just go through here line by line. Like always, we've got our consent agenda with the work session and council meeting minutes, accounts payable A, and contract billings from Wiregrass Construction Company on our Phase 2 resurfacing. Barry, or does anybody know, is that our final billing, Glenn? So, okay. Gotcha. All right, then we've got Dozier Road improvements for Poly Incorporated, Southern Earth Sciences, and Ewing Connor for the admin services on our demolition project, which is upcoming. Then we got travel requests from the police department, tourism, and some requests to dispose of equipment out at the Civic Center. The mayor is going to recognize Evelyn Holmes Smith for her accomplishments, and we'll have privilege of the floor and staff reports. We have some old business, some public hearings that were announced at previous meetings regarding the Hundley rezone, the annexation and zoning of the Howell property, and the 2020 redistricting. Any changes on that redistricting, Jonathan? It's exactly what.
There were no changes.
Is Mr. Farmer going to be here tonight in case there's any?
He has not reached out on that he would be back.
Is anybody anticipating any concerns, questions? And I got one phone call regarding it, and it was just some questions.
I just had one call, or a couple calls on, the streets. How one side of the street is one district, the other one, and they didn't know if this is going to, the whole street will become one district or the other.
Right.
Make it easier. That was the questions I've got.
Well, I always explain that as the line's got to be somewhere.
Exactly.
There's just, you can't have a gray area.
No.
And if they have specific requests, if they want to call down here, I can try to look at the map. We have one that's blown up with the new district in some language I think that was advertised in the paper. If they're having trouble following that because it's really it's not easy to read, we'd be happy to investigate that for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this does say recognize Scott Farmer. So, can you find?
Yeah, I can give him a call.
If he's not going to be here, let me know so I know that he's not. I thought he told us he would be here.
I'll double check.
Okay.
But I haven't heard from him today.
Yeah. Anything else to discuss for any of these other public hearings? Obviously, we'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss those in the meeting. So I will, just so y'all know, for the Hunley rezone and the Howell annexation, before we do those, I'll read those rules that I read not rules, but outline the agenda. I feel that helps because a lot of these people, aren't necessarily seasoned attendees of our meetings. So I'll set the expectations up. Did everybody think that's working well? Okay, good. I'll do that same thing. Then new business. I guess we need to talk about this P River Historical Society. Billy, or who's gonna? Maybe Jonathan talk to us about that. Okay, good.
Yeah, you guys can come up. They may have some questions.
Yeah. So we've got. I think we've all got a exhibit. Does everybody have a copy? Looks like it. So we've got an exhibit. This is P River Historical Society. Just for a little background, we're asking to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with P River Historical Society for the relocation of the Little Red Schoolhouse building, which I think we're probably all familiar with, owned by the Historical Society, to city-owned property located behind the Depot Museum. So, take it away.
So how it came before you, P River Historical Society contacted our tourism office, Tammy Doer, and said, hey, we just sold our property where the Little Red Schoolhouse and Visitors Center is on the bypass, and we would like to relocate it behind the museum. That property is owned by the city. Is that something the city would be interested in doing? So staff tried to look to make sure, because GIS records weren't very clear about who actually owned the property. It turns out
the property behind the depot.
Correct. Turns out that it is in fact the city. So this is a request that we brought before you, and I think that's what you'll see in the graph or the picture that was drawn out for you. And I'll let them talk about a little bit their plans and the value that would hopefully create for the community.
My name is Amanda Skinner. I'm a volunteer for the P River Historical Society. What we want to do basically is consolidate what we have. We don't have enough volunteers to be at the two locations. That's why we sold the Welcome Center property. But the Little Red Schoolhouse, I don't know if you know the history of it. It's a replica. It was built for the bicentennial, and all the children at that time in Enterprise School System rotated and went through it to experience, a Little Red Schoolhouse. And so we would like to keep that in the city and move it to our depot so it can be used again, whether it be, classes coming in, children spending half a day there, or just other things, having classes there on different topics and stuff. But we need it to be in a location we can staff it with our volunteers. So we just request to be able to move it, behind the Depot Museum, which we already have, And eventually we would like to make that whole area into a heritage park and potentially put out some, our old farming equipment, have some beehives, things like that. But right now we would just like to move it because the property it was sitting on has already been sold. And we would like to get it out of the new property owner's way and not have to move it more than once. So we requestfully ask that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Billy, you got anything to add?
Just let you know that's kind of part one of part two that we're asking for this. So that's very important if we're able to approve this, if y'all are okay with it, and just if you have any other questions, we'd be glad to. And we've done all the research, working through Rainer, everything's lined up based on what we need to do. So.
Any questions or concerns from anybody? All right. I mean, I certainly don't have any concerns. So. All right. So we'll move on to the Civic Center carpet extractor. I guess our old one has bit the dust.
Yeah. It was purchased when we opened up the Civic Center, and I can't remember exactly. I think 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, it would have been around now.
So anyway, it's been well used. Berget uses this carpet cleaner about after every major function to keep things clean. Spot clean, and so often she'll do a complete clean. So it's definitely needed. We hosted a event last Thursday. Need some cleanup from it. So
anybody got any questions, concerns?
Just the only thing, it just wasn't a budget item, but we feel like we can still purchase it and stay within budget.
Stay within budget.
Yes.
And that'll be this budget season.
Yes,
this year.
Yes, sir. So if y'all approve it tomorrow, we'll work on getting the purchase order and should be able to get the equipment.
So they already have it on hand.
My understanding is we should be able to get our hands on it fairly quickly.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Library board appointment. Not a lot to talk about here, right? I think it's been explained to everybody that as everybody knows, we're trying to get all these boards aligned to make these appointments in April and take office in July, I think June or July, whenever we had those plans made. Of course, that relies upon everybody kind of cooperating with that. So, there's going to be resignations along the way, or people that don't want to serve those extra few months that we've asked them to. So, anyways, it's just cleaning some of that up. I think Ms. Avetta Carey has been, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is it Ovita? Ovita. Who is making that nomination? Eugene. So, Eugene, you're going to make that nomination to the Enterprise Library Board. We announced that at our last meeting. Anything to add there, Jonathan?
Nothing to add. No, sir.
All right. Any questions, concerns on our library? All right. And then we've got council member comments, mayor's report, and we will adjourn. So back to our everybody okay with that agenda? No concerns, additions, deletions? Let's move back to our work session agenda. Main Street board appointments. More board appointments.
Yes. Okay, so we have 5 openings on our board right now. The Main Street Enterprise Board created a nominating committee, and they came up with the nominations that you see that are in your packets. There's a brief description for each of them, just to give you a little bit of background on why they were selected. This slate was presented to the Main Street Enterprise Board as a whole, and they voted to let me come and request your part from this.
So typically the way we would do this, as long as everybody's agreeable, is we'll just read these nominees, lay that over, and do it next meeting. Are you okay with that? Is everybody comfortable with accepting this slate of nominees, at least for announcement tonight? So I'll just read the nominees. That way it'll be recorded in our minutes. Adel McAllister, Katie Sawyer, Tracy Simmons, Jane Wardrobe, and Andrew Wyndham. Okay. Did you have anything else to add?
No.
All right. Any questions on that?
Thank you.
All right. Beverly, just get that on next agenda if you don't mind. All right, Barry, you want to talk to us about engineering fees, sewer rates?
Good evening.
Yep.
Can y'all see that okay over my shoulder? I'm trying to get it close to you, but I forgot how to get to the microphone. The portable mic was missing, so we'll have to get us another one. I want to go through with you, if you don't mind, I'll do it right here. I've got 3 sets of rate fees I want to go through with you. The sewage, garbage, and engineering fees, which engineering fees, for those that don't live in our world, that's basically building permits and inspection fees that we see for construction. So I want to go through those 3 with you. The focus of this was to look at our services that we provide the customers for the citizens of the city, and to see what their services are actually costing versus what we're charging the general public, and to see if there's a way to get it more net neutral, where the services are paying for themselves. And that's the kind of the background of why I did this study. I'll tackle sewage first. Sewage rates are based on water usage. So this is the rate structure that we currently have now. The water usage for basically from 0 to 2,000 gallons, which is the base fee, is $6.70. And then there's a tack on additional fee for the more water you use, the more you pay. And it's a declining scale, meaning the more water you use, the less that gallon of water costs the customer. There's also a $10.50 environmental fee that's put on the water bill as well. Current residents, so just for an idea of what a current resident pays, what I did was I took a dump of a full month's water bill and sewage bill from the city. This wasn't a peak month, it wasn't a low-end month, it was something kind of in the middle. And then I took those 10,000 plus bills that were mailed out, put them into a database, and manipulated a model that replicated what the sewage bills were for a typical month. So when I say the sample set, all this is based on that 1 month that we dissected, that we said what were the bills then, and then with the proposed changes, what would they be? So you can see from that model that we ran on a typical month, the minimum residential bill was $17.20. The maximum residential bill was $85 and change, and the average residential bill was $24.54. So how does that rank up against what other cities that I considered our peers, what is that costing? And you can see that, and this is the minimum bill, the $17.20, how it ranks amongst Dothan, Ozark, Geneva, Troy, Florala, Andalusia, Elba, and Opp. And there's 2 below and several above us. So how are we doing? Basically what I did was I looked at what our current budgets were for sewage, and that is disposal and collection. That number is right at $4 million as a current budget. Revenue for the city is roughly $3.38 million. There's a deficit, and this was based on 2019 numbers of about $600,000. We're losing about $600,000 for providing sewage to the customers in the city of Enterprise. We looked at 2020 as well, and those numbers were nearly identical. Worked with Leanne, and that's what we kind of came up with, is that we're running a deficit of about $600,000 per year for sewage service. Also, in our sewage fees, we have tap fees. If someone wanted to come and tap into our sewer lines, we're charged $175 for a resident and $225 for a commercial person to tie into our sewage system. And you can see what I could find online for tap fees for Dothan, Ozark, Geneva, and Troy, kind of where their tap fees fall as well. Highest one's around $850. The next lowest one was around $300 for Geneva. So proposed policy changes. I ran about a dozen different scenarios, to be honest with you. Some from hitting just the basic fee, some hitting just the larger users, and came up. This is my recommendation to you after doing this. This makes the least impact across the whole city. My recommendation is to increase the base fee from $6.70 to an additional $2.50 in the base fee. In addition to that, the additional fees, which is for that next 1,000 gallons and for the next 1,000 gallons, to increase those fees by 15%. And I'll show you what impact that has in just a minute. Also, I recommend that we up our tap fees. People tying into the sewer system, these are new developments, new customers, new buildings, and it takes us, if you can imagine, sending out a 3-man crew to do a tap with a piece of equipment, for them showing up on site, doing all the labor to install it. $850 is very reasonable for what we see as far as what the cost is, as well as what other people are charging for that same service. Also, I recommend that we implement an annual increase tied to some consumer price index to keep up with inflation. So with the proposed rate changes, this is the impact for each one of those, residential and commercial. The minimum residential increase would be $2.50. So I took the exact same model, input the new data, and how did that affect the customer base on that same model, that same sample set? The minimum increase was $2.50. That was for someone that uses just the basic fee, 2,000 gallons of water and sewer. Their bill would go up $2.50, which is a 15% increase. The maximum residential increase went up $12.76. The average residential increase is $3.66. For commercial users, the basic commercial user doesn't come up at all, as it's a zero change for the basic commercial. However, when you start talking about the maximum increase, that there was one very large user on that water bill, and their bill went up $219. That was an anomaly that was out there as far as the water bill, and it was definitely something that was out of the ordinary. But I wanted to show you in that particular sample set, that was the maximum impact if that customer had these new rates installed to them. So the average commercial increase is $6.21 amongst all the commercial users. So as a comparison, I want to put there kind of where we are currently versus where we are with if we decided to go forward with the rate increases as I proposed. Currently and proposed, you can see those numbers there. So very slight impact when it comes to the residential impact. The maximum will be from that $85 to $93. That's taking an actual bill that was mailed out from the sample set, then that same actual bill with these changes implemented. If we were to do this, this is where I could give you a bunch of charts, but I just picked the minimum bill. The minimum bill for us would be $19.70, and this is where it would compare against the minimum bill for all of those communities that are out there. Across the names, you can read across the names on the bottom. But that puts us in average, basically, with all the other minimum bills for other sewer, for other communities in our, what I would call our peer communities. If we were to take our tap fees and take them both to $8.50, whether it's a commercial or whether it's residential, it's the same amount of crew to go out there and do that type of tap. So I said recommend $8.50 for both of those. That's where we would be, which we would be in line with Dothan and be in line with the commercial side of Troy. So with that, that's what I had on sewer. I don't know if y'all want questions for me for each one, or if you want to hold it to the end, I'll do whatever you want to. But before I go on to garbage or sanitation, do you have any questions for me on sewer?
I don't have any questions. I did, I guess, have a comment. I mean, I thank you for the way you've presented this to us. It makes it very easy to digest, and I say you've done your homework on it. And in my mind, it makes my decision pretty easy. Obviously, we can't continue to run a $600,000 deficit, in perpetuity. And I know we've got work to do on our sewer system. So I guess the only thing that kind of gave me pause was the sewer tap fees. It's kind of like we're going from a pretty low number to a pretty high a jump. I wonder if, and this is really just for discussion, is there maybe a stair step that we should look at to, over a 2-year? I guess I'd be interested in Eugene's opinion on that.
Well, looking at the way other cities are, comparing us over the past years, ours always have been extremely low. Right. And what we're doing here is only going to get us back up in the average with the way other cities are. And but of course, I see your point of instead of doing it
just
all
kind
at
of a
one
shock,
time, stepping it up.
Yeah.
But I'm very this is favorable. But I noticed also now where you say 850, you have a little paragraph in there, a comment, plus construction material.
Yes, sir. So that correlates to what other cities say as well. There's a tap fee for sending their crew, their equipment to do the tap, plus whatever the material is. So if you're doing a 12-inch tap, it's definitely going to cost you more than tying into an 8-inch tap or a 4-inch.
I agree.
So not knowing what those material costs are, it's just whatever the material cost plus the tap fee is the way that.
What are we doing now?
We're doing 175 plus material and
So we are
225 plus material now. Okay. It's just taking that basic fee and raising the 175 and the 225 up to an 850. Yeah. I did not do any numbers about what that means on the bottom line as far as revenue. I didn't do the research to see how many of those taps we do in a year. I saw it and said that is extremely low. Yeah. When you looked at all the fees, I just said, what are other people charging? And I just put it in line with what I saw Dothan doing. But we could pick any number that y'all feel comfortable with that, or if you want to stair step it.
No, I mean, I think the number is fair and reasonable, and probably where we need to be headed. I guess my only concern is, people think it's one thing. They go out and maybe they, trade with a customer or something, and then it goes from 175 to 850 overnight. Right. Is there a more reasonable style?
So one of the things that this does not tackle was implementation calendar. I think there needs to be some time frame of people that are doing work now or people giving time for people to budget. One of the things I did consider was doing a stair step, basically saying this is the ultimate, but do we do an intermittent step to get there with the amount of work it would take and the confusion to do, especially in engineering permits and stuff you'll see. My recommendation is to get there in one step, but if you want to say 60 days, 90 days, 1st of October.
That's what I was thinking. Suggest instead of doing it overnight, give everybody a notice and let them know this is going to be happening in 90 days or whatever.
As a recommendation, our fiscal year starts October 1, so putting these in place, at like 60 days out, 90 days out. Of course, you can't vote on it tonight, but if you decide you want to go forward with a formal proposal for doing it, then we can do a 60 or 90 day time, give people a chance to get ready for this before it becomes an actuality. The other thing you mentioned we haven't spent any money at the plants. And one thing I was going to point out to y'all is we have not really done any capital projects at our wastewater treatment plants. And we haven't been on an aggressive schedule to replace clay pipe or the old sewer pipe in the city. We've basically been repairing problems that have come up. And we know that we're going to spend $3.5 million at our wastewater treatment plants in the very near future to fix some stuff that needs to be fixed. Those numbers aren't factored in to what I'm showing you here. These are actual numbers from our budgets for what we've had for the last 2 or 3 years. So this would just get us up on a basic operating to get us back net neutral. So I just want to point that out to you.
Well, I definitely think whatever we decide to do, we need to get it into an ordinance, announce a public hearing for it, 2 weeks out, and have a public hearing before we, because just to. And then, like you say, not make it effective for 60 or 90 days, whatever we decide. And does anybody else have any input on that?
No, I think I looked at your last slide. Get us out of that 600,000. I know we're not in the business to make money. You said that several times. But that $600,000 could be spent somewhere else, roads or anything else. So this is great.
Councilman, you're spending that $600,000. It's just coming out of the general fund.
Right.
You're taking money from something else
exactly
to supplement the cost of doing sewer. And your point is well taken. We're not in the business to make money. We're not doing this for profit. We're not a company trying to return something to our stockholders. This is truly to do the work and to do it as effectively as we can and to try to cover our cost. And this gets us to as close to a net neutral without giving it too much of a jump for the citizens. And I thought the comparison might ease some people's mind to say, what is my bill going to be, before and after this increase?
Most contractors who work in other cities are familiar with these higher rates, and when they come to Enterprise, they're shocked that our rates are so low. Mm-hmm. So when it increases, I don't think there's going to be a big shock to them.
Sonia, you got anything?
I'm just not very familiar about the commercial taps in that regard. I just when I see 175 to 850, if I was that's a lot. But I definitely understand that it seems to be the norm.
And that's if you were building a house and you wanted to tie into the sewer line, it's going to cost you $850 for us to go make the tap, dig the sewer line up, make the connection, to the right of way for you to tie in your home to. That's what that cost is. Repair the street if that means it. If we have to bore across the road and get to the other side, $850, I'll be honest with you, probably doesn't pay for the real cost of that tap. But it's in line with what our peers are doing, and I think that's the right move personally for our sewer taps.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big problem we have here is that, and this isn't the only category. We kind of fixed water several years ago, but we've had this tendency to fix something, and then not do anything for it to so 30 years from now, somebody, they're going to be here fixing it again and having to go from $850 to $8,000. I don't know. It would have been nice if this had been, just maybe indexed to some sort of inflation, where we wouldn't have the sticker shock going from 175 to 850.
So our garbage fee, you'll see in a minute, that has that caveat in that 2018 resolution that was passed to keep up with a consumer price index, to keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
So that's what a recommendation I would be is, as we do this, we just keep up yearly with that small increase, so we're not having to take this big leap. Not saying that at some point we may not have to make a major increase to catch up with some things that we cannot foresee.
But at least you'll be that much closer.
Yes, sir.
And you won't be running those deficits.
And that's my recommendation, is we put a CPI or some form of a inflation clause per year annual increase to keep it minuscule.
Right.
To keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
If it's okay with you, I'm going to go on to sanitation unless y'all have any further questions.
Anybody have anything else on that?
So on our garbage fees or sanitation, this is the ordinance that was passed 2018, and I regurgitated some of the language there, but it outlined that there will be a $2 a year increase to be, quote, more cost neutral. The rate increases stopped October 1 of 2021, so basically last year, and it stopped at $21.50 per month for residential garbage pickup. It also had two things. It said that the resolution states that on or about October 1, 2022, a study will be performed and determine if garbage fees are working to make sanitation services more cost neutral. And it says, and I'll pull this out, and to tie garbage fees to some kind of consumer price index adjustment, the same thing that you mentioned that we probably should implement for our sewer. It was already done in our 2018 garbage, so it's just to get in line with what a resolution the council at that time had passed. So we have not increased garbage since October 1 of last year, and it's currently at $21.50. So where are we? Like, as we benchmark ourselves amongst our peers, you can see that we're in the upper echelon of what garbage costs are in other cities. And I show you Andalusia, Dothan, Elba, Florala, Geneva, Opp, Ozark, Troy. And you can get a dollar figure, but one thing this graph does not show you is the level of service that those people provide to their customers. And for each one of our services, you can see, well, I'll get there in just a second. Current budgeting right now is roughly $2.8 million for FY21. If you take the $21.50 times the number of customers that we right now currently have a deficit of about $80,000 currently. That's under this current budget.
That's an annualized, or
that's an annualized number.
Okay.
Annualized number. That's an annual deficit of roughly $80,000. As a comparison, I just want to talk to you about what we do. We run trucks by every resident 3 times a week. We come by and pick up their garbage can 1 time a week. We come by and pick up yard debris, whatever they put on the street, 1 time a week. And if there's a special needs case, somebody that's elderly can't get their garbage can on the street, or handicapped person, we go to the house, pick the can up, bring it to the street, dump it, take it, and put it back at the house. Our level of service that we give, I think, is superior to what you see in the graph for other communities and people that I discussed about what they do. For example, one person told me, we come pick the can up, if it's not on the street, we don't come back. You have to wait till next week. We get a lot of calls from people saying, hey, I had a car parked in front of my house, I couldn't get to the can, can y'all please swing by here? We do everything we can to accommodate those people and go back and pick those cans up. It's just trying to give a level of service of what we think the customer should deserve. My recommendation is to continue the same rate, that $2 a year, for 1 more year. So in October 1 to continue to 2150 to 2350. And the reason for that is, well, we're only $80,000 in a deficit right now. We're expecting our landfill fees to go up 7 to 8%. Our tipping fees, just to take it to the landfill within the next few months. The fuel charges are still high. We have not bought equipment like knuckle boom trucks, garbage trucks that we need to, and the fleet is starting to get older, and we're already past our budget on maintenance on those equipment. We're going to have to buy some equipment. And doing some projections for what I think our budget should be, that $2 increase per customer per month will get us back to net neutral on what I think we should be on garbage fees.
So what does the ordinance currently allow for? It allows for an increase based on CPI, right?
It does. So annually CPI increase, but it was a $2 increase for like 3 or 4 years in a row since 18 to get it up. So the last increase was October of last year. And it says we're doing a study, which is what we're doing right now. And that is whether we just implement CPI or do we decide to keep on with some other rate structure. My recommendation is we need to do one more year, $2 per year to get us in the right spot for garbage, and then implement a CPI at that point. 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 21. So that's 4 years of $2 an hour, $2 per customer per year increase. So it ran 4 years. There's a lot of catching up that the council at that time said from where they were to get it to 2150.
But wouldn't CPI? I'm just trying to compare the two. CPI, I think, has been running around 9%, right? 9% of 2150.
So currently, you can do CPI a couple different ways, but annualized category for CPI is 9.1% across the board. So if we want to implement a CPI of a national CPI of just like 9.1, we could implement a 9.1 starting effectively this October 1, which would increase our rates from, and I'm doing this off the cuff, so
2150.
Our budget was 2.8 million, so 9% of 2.8 million. My mind's kind of blank at the moment.
2.8 times 9.09.
So roughly $3.
Yeah, $1.95 is almost
$1.95. It's almost the same
Right.
thing as a $2.50 increase.
It looks
The
like
simple
that's
answer-
what you're already allowed to do is right at that $2.
And either way you decide to do that, if you want to implement that national CPI, we could do that at 9.1%. Or if you want to just blanketly say, let's continue on what we've already put in place. Let's do one more $2 increase. It's basically the same number, and then follow CPI. Either way, it made the numbers easier for me just to implement the additional $2, and it got it to the same number.
Is $2 increase a year?
$2 increase per
per
month
month
per customer per month. Currently, the customer's paying $21.50 per month.
If it's already in the ordinance, wouldn't it be cleaner to just allow that to?
We can
do the
we can do the ordinance just like it's written. I can implement that. It says staff.
Isn't it already in the ordinance, or does it have to be implemented?
It's already in
It's
the
already
ordinance
in the
now.
ordinance.
That 2018 ordinance is already in there.
which was going to be my next question.
So you're talking about a 5 cents difference basically.
Yeah, 10 cents difference, yes, sir.
Well, we just did by times 0.09. You did whatever. It's going to get it pretty close.
If you
My
want to implement
preference
the
would be
CPI,
just to move forward with the ordinance we got in place.
Yeah.
leave it like it is and do the CPI.
We put it there.
So I will tell you one thing, just as as I look at this, there's a couple things we can do. One, we can leave it like it is and do nothing and keep losing money. We can implement some kind of a CPI change or a monthly increase to get it back net neutral. We can reduce our services, which I haven't heard from y'all say you're willing to do that. And the other is we did talk to other companies, other cities that had went out and got a third party to do garbage collection. And what we found was they may be able to do it at the same rate or a little bit more, but the level of service went tremendously down to let somebody, they come by one time a week, and if you don't have it out, call Waste Management or call MDI. So I just want to.
Yeah. But our current ordinance has built in that arms the mayor and staff to increase index to inflation.
So yes, sir, it does. It's in there now. And I can implement that. We don't have to make a change in the recommendation.
Everybody okay with that?
So I'll move on to the last one. one thing I hate to do, but before I leave, garbage on the grinding site pickup, I'll just let you know. If we have a full load, we go to your house and there's a full truckload of garbage at the street, we charge $25, just so you know, to pick that up. Here's what other people charge for that same type of service. You can see we're very low in our grinding site, but I don't think that's a real, as far as a dollar figure cost at the bottom end of the year. I don't think that's a big dollar figure, but it's just another level of service that I think we give our customers. And I just wanted to point that out to you. Moving lastly to the engineering department. Currently, I broke this down by new resident. I did it by residential and commercial. There's several ways you can do this, and it's very complicated, but I try to keep it as simple as I could. We looked at a 1,500 square foot house, new construction, 2,000, 3,000, and 5,000. And I can tell you all the numbers basically came out the same thing. So I picked what an average build out right now, currently 2,000 square foot new home. Our cost for doing a new home for 2,000 square feet and $300,000 investment, $150 a foot. And then I compared that number against what other cities charge for that same type of build. Everybody does it differently, but we had to make some assumptions to do some comparisons. And what you can see is an enterprise is $388 is what it would cost you to get a construction permit and do 15 inspections for a residential home in the city, $388. Comparable to the other things you can see what Andalusia, Auburn, Dothan, Ozark, Troy, and Tuscaloosa would charge for that same similar build in their neighborhood. This is how the structure is set up currently. We have permit fees, which are $2.25 for the first $1,000 of construction, and then $1.25 for each additional $1,000. And then if it's commercial, we have a craft fee that's charged as a pass-through. We collect it and pass that on to the state. And these are what our inspection fees currently are. So for electrical inspections, $15, all the way down to sewer inspection or electrical upgrade, $5. And that's us answering the call, receiving the customer, receiving their money, putting it into the system, sending out an inspection, doing the inspection, writing it up for $5. It's, we can't honestly put somebody in a truck and crank it up and drive them there to the site for $5. My recommendation for engineering fees moving forward is that we do a $50 issuance fee, a minimum permit of $50. That's to receive the customer, take their money, write the permit, do all the inspections for residential, and close the permit out for $50 as a minimum fee. And that would include any project from $5,000 or less. So if you're doing a remodel in your house that's less than $5,000, it's all included in that $50 fee. If it's more than $5,000 in construction, it triggers the additional, and it'd be $3 per $1,000 of construction. So anything under $5,000, no additional fee. Anything over $5,000, $3 per 1,000. Other fees, just kind of give you an idea. A pool, sort of like a fence and simple permits, would be a $50 fee. For a pool inspection, we have to do 3 inspections on a pool. So not only pulling it in, making sure that the offsets and all are right on the boundary and make sure it meets the code requirements for the subdivision, but also we have 3 inspections. That would be a $100 flat fee for pools. And whether it costs you $10,000 to put a pool in, it costs you $50,000 to put a pool in, is a $100 fee. There's no inspection fee for residential inspections. There's 15 currently required. And we're having a lot of trouble with re-inspection fees. People because the fees are $5. We've had one customer call in one time, just order 4 inspections on the same house for the same thing because they knew they weren't going to pass it the first time. So I said, just how much is it going to cost? Well, it's $5 inspection. Go ahead and put me down for 4 of them. Here's $20. Well, that's causing us a lot of problems. And we're having about 30% failure rates on our inspections right now because people are calling inspections too early, which has caused us problem with staffing and making sure we can get adequate coverage for getting people out there and doing the inspections. My recommendation is we do a reinspection fee for $50. If they fail it the second time, it doubles, goes to $100. If they fail it again, it double again, go to $200. If it fails again, it goes to $400. And we'll keep doubling it until they get it right. And hopefully that will cut out, and they'll call for the inspections when they're ready for the inspection. So that's my recommendation to stop that. If we were to do this new rate on 2,000 square foot home, same scenario we talked about, here's where it put us. It put us at 0.32% of construction costs for a new home, and you can see where that puts us across the line. Existing commercial permit, so I picked a $500,000 commercial development. This is where our fees are, 0.13% of construction. I recommend, this is the same thing that you saw before, no changes there. The only two changes I have, we have about 20 inspections we do for a commercial. That's average, depending on what kind of a commercial development it is. We have to do more or less, but it's about 20 per inspection. And then we add the craft fee. That's something that we have to do by state law, and we pass that on to the state of Alabama. So the only recommendation there is to leave it just like we did. $50 issuance fee, and then $3 per thousand over $5,000. The same thing, and make it easy for everybody. Is easy, one-time fee. There's no inspection fees. And this is where it would put us. It puts us at 0.31 of construction cost, and it puts us kind of in the middle for what I think our peer neighbors are. And then just cutting to the chase, what does this do? If you were to add up these three different things, revenue, what does that mean for the city? You're going to bring in about a $500,000 annual increase for sewer. Sanitation, garbage, that was based on the $2 increase, so it'll be a little bit less than that, but it'd be basically the same thing, about $250,000 for garbage, and then engineering would add about $130,000 annual increase for about $880,000 of revenue increase, and it gets us back right close to net neutral.
So does that get engineering back to a revenue, back to where the services are paying for themselves?
Well, it is on the inspection stuff, but engineering does so much more than just inspection fees and residential. It does get to the point where it pays for itself for new construction and cost there. Now, one thing we do like preliminary plat reviews, we do construction reviews, we do a lot of other things that are a service to the community that we don't charge for.
Right.
And we could do
this would charge for the this would cover the cost of the inspection.
This covers our like pulling a permit and paying for the inspections.
Okay. We got to move on. Can you send all, well, you gave us all this, but if y'all don't mind, we got to move on to this budget presentation by Jonathan and Leanne. But any questions y'all get with Barry in the coming weeks, and we got to figure out how, what exactly we want to implement and the process we want to use. But,
yes, sir. Thank you.
Leanne and Jonathan, will y'all come update us on the budget process?
Now I feel bad because I have no slides. It's just me. So department heads got their budgets into me last week on Friday. Jonathan and I have already started, or I've started going through them over the weekend, kind of peeling out some things and doing an initial review. Jonathan and I have already met with a couple of department heads this week to review and make some additional cuts and suggestions on some items. So we're gonna continue meeting with them this week. They're gonna put in revisions and have those revisions done by next Friday, and we should still be on schedule then for our meeting on the 25th. At the farmers market, because that's what we had available for that day. And
what was that date again?
The 25th. Thursday should be the last Thursday.
Have we sent out invitations to all the outside?
I have one person that I need to get an invitation to today. Was waiting to clarify about something, and I did that today, so I will send that out tomorrow. Okay. But everybody else has been notified.
So far, so good on
yes.
attending that.
Yes. And then I just want to give you also like a really quick update on the audit. I have a draft copy of the audit in my office now. We were held up a little. We were waiting on the school system to get their audit finished, and then waiting on the water board to have theirs completed. So the water board audit is issued as of July 31st. So that information then will be carried into the city's audit and the report that we get back from there. So I would like to think that we might be able to have one in the next 2 weeks before the next meeting for you all to review, but I would probably think it would be the first meeting in September, maybe, to invite the auditors to come and present.
Okay.
So, but of course you can ask me.
Any questions on the budget process? It's going to look a lot like last year, right? As far as our role in. Go ahead, John.
So the only substantial change is really the location.
Right.
So, and outside of that, we still have a very similar schedule. roughly 30 minutes for the various department heads to present to you, and roughly 15 minutes on the appropriations calendar, with some time to slip. But we should have everybody out maybe by 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
We're starting at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock to 3 p.m.
Okay.
And then, sorry. Then of course, there'll still be time once council's had a chance to then provide your suggestions on where you would like to see changes made in the budget before actual adoption, which on my schedule still would be September 20th, which would be the second meeting in September. But that allows then department heads and me plenty of time to go back and make those revisions, per council.
So ideally, would we have a budget resolution to present at the first meeting in September to carry over, or?
Do we have to present?
Right.
So that would be just the 20th.
Okay.
Yeah. Or whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we've passed it at the first meeting in October multiple times in the past, so, which is cutting it close. I realize. Yeah. Any questions or concerns on our current budget process? All right. So, anybody have anything else to discuss before we take a brief recess? All right. We'll take an 8-minute recess and reconvene in our regular meeting at 6 o'clock.
So I'm assuming that all these people are here from this one that the planning commission didn't do anything. That's the 100.
And why are they so adamant about it?
They think it's going to be
You know, but these people do change.
when they see going from I know. When a lot of these people, I know where they live, they don't live anywhere near that property. And leave things to you and those are these people on now because this is going to affect your property. And they think that they want everything to do.
But this is off of
Surviving? It's got to be a long drop somewhere. Street. What happens?
Makes no sense. There's a creek right behind my house.
Well, but you're the streets is what. But even the ordinance says streets. Well, we can make one area.
So if we got a big problem on the street, instead of going to tie up one city councilman, we're going to tie up two.
I have people in this. Right. I always and I tell them
It's like as many times as they fix the other side of Henderson, because we only have 4 houses, 2 of them at the Henderson Street address. Our house hasn't been paid for about 3 years. You gonna give me some type of cue?
when you do the 3 minute.
Yeah.
It's up here.
Privilege of the flow.
State your name and write it down. Speak in the microphone.
I don't need that. I know it's recorded. Going on live.
Should I put it right here? Is that okay? That's exactly what it will be. Will they stand here and talk here? Is that what they'll be, or should I put it?
I think they were standing here when I walked in.
To here? Okay.
So how will this work? Should I have?
So what will happen is the mayor will come here and make a presentation. She'll probably stand right here. She'll face everybody this way. So that'll pick that up for this. It'll pick up the sound. Face everybody right there.
Now during the actual stuff I need to get for a news station, should I move that mic up there to Mr. Townsend?
You hear everything from right here. Unless if someone comes up to speak, it's probably fine. Let me double check with Kay. She's our communications director.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could get the room called to order. If everybody could take a seat if there's one available. If not, just find somewhere to stand. All right, I've got 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all council members are here and accounted for. We will stand for the prayer and pledge of allegiance. We have Pastor Ben Bowden, my pastor from First Baptist Church, to lead us in our opening prayer.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are thankful for your kindness and love that you show us every day by giving us life and breath and our very beings. And Lord, it's not by chance. We're all gathered here today. And so, God, we pray that we would make the most use of our time and that you would bless us with great wisdom and great discernment. Thank you for these leaders that have stepped up and answered the call to duty to bless our community in this way. You know, every community is made up of great people, and it's because of your blessing and your hand of blessing. All good gifts come from you, from the Father of lights. And so we give you thanks and honor. And so we ask for wisdom. We know that unless you build the house, the laborers labor in vain. And so, God, we pray that we put you first in everything that we do, and that your hand of protection would be on this town. Thank you for the sweet town of Enterprise. What a blessing it is to have been a citizen here for so many years, to be brought up, to be reared in this sweet town. And so we pray that for the sake of its citizens and for the sake of your glory, we would do that which is pleasing to you, all for the name, in the name and for the glory of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Please join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, Council, you have the agenda in your packet that we discussed in the work session previous to this meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the City Council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the City Council. I will now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now have a special recognition by the mayor. Mayor, you have something for us?
Mr. President, members of the council, verifying citizens, we are tonight recognizing Evelyn Holmes Smith. She was the winner for the Alabama State School Wrestling State Championship. We're going to ask Evelyn if she can come up. Evelyn is a sophomore at Enterprise High School. Evelyn competed in 160-pound division, and within 45 seconds of the match starting, she pinned her opponent down. As a result of her outstanding skills, Evelyn took home the gold medal and was recently named All-American after participating in a freestyle tournament in Fargo, North Dakota, finished 6th in the nation. Our hopes are to get more females involved in the sport. Our goal is to be a 5-time gold medal champion, and I can tell you, at this pace, she's going to win. She will achieve that great goal. Evelyn, not only have you represented the City of Enterprise, you have also represented Enterprise High School. You're setting a path that will pave the way for future generations. And on behalf of the City Council, we would like to present to you with a certificate of achievement as well as a monument statue, congratulating you on your success and for representing Enterprise in such a terrific manner.
This is a sports award certificate, and it reads, "This certifies that Evelyn Holmes Smith competitively represented Enterprise, Alabama by competing with great drive and dedication and winning a gold medal in the Alabama State Girls Wrestling State Championship 160-pound division. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of this city to be affixed by the office of the mayor, City of Enterprise, Alabama, dated this 2nd day of August, 2022, and it is signed by William E. Cooper, Mayor of Enterprise.
Also, we would like to present emblem with the replica of the Boweevil Monument. This stands as one of the significant parts of our town, the only city in the world that owns a pet. So again, we want to thank Emma for what she's doing, and to those young men over at Enterprise High School, be well.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Ms. Evelyn. All right, now is the time of the meeting for privilege of the floor. This is the time of the meeting that allows anybody who's present here tonight to address the council for 3 minutes. I will point out that if you're here tonight to address anything, that we do have 3 public hearings tonight. One is the Hunley rezone, one is the annexation and zoning of the Howell property, and one of them is the 2020 redistricting. So those public hearings will have their own time set aside to address those specific topics. So the privilege of the floor is for anything that does not cover those 3 items. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the council? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Pull the microphone to you and tell us who you are.
Well, thank you, Chairman, Mayor, and other council members. My name is Mike Sutterfield, and I'm with the Veteran Service Organization.
Ms. Beverly can pass them out for us.
So within the City of Enterprise, and I'm going to ask one question to the members of our hand. If you're a veteran, could you please raise your hand? Or a spouse of a veteran? So as you already know, Councilman and Mayor, that the city is largely has a large veteran population. And what we would like to do is, with me, I have Bob Spinbauer, the commander of the VFW post. Oh, Randy Godfrey is does a lot, but a member of Friends of Army Aviation, and is also on the Retiree Council on Fort Rucker. Buddy King, the commander of the American Legion post here in town, is also the state commander of the American Legion. And Jerry Merrihew is the senior vice commander of the DAV here in town, is also the second junior vice for the state of Alabama. And what we would like to do is to assist the City of Enterprise in the synchronization of efforts and management of limited resources. The Veteran Service Organization of the city offer to conduct the below events for the city. And I have them listed. I can read them if need be for record. There are 7 events, and there are 22 events that we would like a proclamation for that we will do and provide to the city for adjudication. Anything outside of this, what we would ask is that a request of the city to do anything in response to veterans outside of this, utilize the Chamber of Commerce and the Military Veteran Affairs Committee to adjudicate that, to assist the city in managing their resources so we don't have duplication of efforts throughout the time of the year. Would you like for me to read the events for the everyone else?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so the events we would like to utilize, going chronologically, 29 March, Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day. The 3rd Saturday of May, which is Armed Forces Day. The Memorial Day. Flag Day on 14 June or thereabouts. We will conduct that with in conjunction with the city. 7 August is National Purple Heart Day, as we're commemorating next week, as we were this week, in 2 days. 11 September, Patriot Day, and 11 November, Veterans Day. The dates of proclamation include 28 February, the liberation of Crete in 1991, 24 March, the start of Kosovo campaign in 1995, 31 March, the end of Operation Restore Hope, Somalia, 92-93, 12 April, Army Aviation Birthday, the Branch Aviation Birthday in 1983, 1 May is Loyalty Day, 6 May, Military Spouse Appreciation Day, 8 May, Victory in Europe, or VE Day in 1945, 4 to 7 June, the Battle of Midway in 1942, 6 June, D-Day in 1944, 14 June, the Army's birthday in 1775. 22 July, the Coast Guard's birthday in 1790. 27 June, the Korean Armistice in 1955. 31 August, the end of OIF in 2010. 2 September, Victory in Japan Day or VJ Day in 1945. 16 September, POW MIA Day. 18 September, the U.S. Air Force birthday in 1947. 7 October, the start of OEF in 2001. 18 October, recognition of women in the military. 10 November, the U.S. Marine Corps' birthday in 1775. 13 November, the U.S. Navy birthday in 1775. 7 December, Pearl Harbor Day of 1941. And 20 December, the U.S. Space Force birthday in 2019.
All right. Thank you. Does that conclude your?
Yes, sir.
So my recommendation would be to we'll kick this to mayor and staff. If it requires any council action, Jonathan, if y'all don't mind to bring us back a recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're still in privilege of the floor. Is anybody else here to discuss anything with the council that is not contained in these public hearings? All right, seeing no one, we will move on to staff reports. Do we have any staff reports that were not addressed in our work session? Barry, would you?
I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I want to give you one quick staff report concerning the Operation Cleanup that we're doing about the city. We've been doing our homework, putting together. I know I gave a presentation several months back about some of the situations, especially we decided that we would target that Colony Drive area. There's several of them there. We've also had issues in the last couple of meetings that came to your attention over at Apache about garbage being thrown on the right-of-way. We're tackling those with Public Works as far as cleaning those areas up. I've got at the last council meeting, I believe I told you I've got our last person on the panel, which is our next step, is to put an appeals board together. Our intention is to go into these areas that people should not be living in, and to ask the residents, homeowners, landlords, whatever the situation may be, to bring them up to standard, or the city will step in and do what needs to be done. The appeal process is this board that I talked to you about in that presentation. We did find someone that's willing to fill that last seat, so I'll be working with Jonathan Mayor's office to get that panel together to see what needs to be done on your behalf to implement that board. That board needs to be in place so they have an appeal. So as me being the building official to come in to say that a situation is not livable, they have a way to appeal my decision. So that's our next step. That will be coming very quickly. My goal would be to have that to you for next council meeting, but it may be 2 council meetings out before I can time frame wise to get that in place. But it will be very soon. I'll have the panel to you for your approval, and then we're chomping at the bit to get these issues corrected. It's just a time frame of getting all the pieces in place to do that. But I want to give you an update on that and answer any questions you might have.
So you might have questions for Barry. All right. Thanks for that update, Barry.
Yes, sir.
Any other staff reports? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. All right. We have a public hearing and consideration of Ordinance 070522, which is the Hunley rezone. I will now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of Ordinance 070522, providing for the rezone of 32 acres of land owned by Tony Hunley from R100 Residential District to R75A Residential District and B3 Highway Commercial District, located at the corner of Dolphin Street Extension and Highway 27. So this public hearing is now open. I'm going to explain to everybody the agenda and how we run these public hearings. So the first order of business, we will call the applicants or their representatives to present the project and address any known concerns. Then we will call upon staff for any information they might have concerning the project. This should include information about the Planning Commission recommendations and staff recommendations. Then we will allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the project, including any specific concerns they feel the council should take into consideration. We'll then allow the applicants to address any of these concerns that were brought up during the previous period that that they feel were not adequately addressed in their opening comments. Then we will close the public hearing and move to council consideration of the ordinance. So a few ground rules for everybody in attendance. So this is a public hearing during a regular council meeting of the Enterprise City Council. We are here to conduct the business in an orderly manner, and we expect the attendees to respect these proceedings. One person will speak at a time. Please give the person who is speaking the same courtesy you expect when it is your time to speak. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. After you are recognized by me to speak, please come forward and speak directly into the microphone. Give us your name, and please make sure all of your comments are directed at the council. That's us up here, as we will be the ones making the decision. Under no circumstances should you direct your comments to anyone other than the council. Please attempt to refrain from repeating the same points that have previously been made so as to keep the proceedings as efficient as possible. And after the hearing is closed and the council deliberations begin, there will be no more comments from the audience. So those are the ground rules for this hearing. Like I said, we plan to keep this very orderly process, and that'll be the same for the next two hearings. That's the Hunley rezone and the annexation for the Howell. So we currently have the Hunley rezone hearing open. So I'll now call for the applicants to come forward and present the project to the council and to the attendees and address any known concerns.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dallas Boyd with Boyd Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of the Hunleys for this rezone from R100 to R75A and B3 commercial. I was going to put together everybody a PowerPoint presentation with all known concerns, but my wife said I bet everybody will probably get enough sleep this evening, so no need to put everybody to sleep. So we have, I would say, 4 major issues that we would like to go on and address up front. First is traffic and safety. It's a very valid concern, and currently at R100, the proposed development would generate a significant less amount of traffic than the R100 development would in final build out. And since this is just a rezoning request, when it comes time to get plans put together for the plat, for the engineering, we work closely with Barry and his group to make sure that all those issues are addressed. We'll work with the DOT. I know specifically that intersection, a lot of the issue is when you're going across Dolphin Extension in Port of Lunsford, there's no left turn lane. There's no left turn arrow. And so if you can imagine you're at the intersection deciding if the oncoming traffic is going to turn left or right, it's kind of hard to make a decision. So that unknown creates a lot of anxiety and unknowns. And so there's currently 3,200 vehicles per day at that intersection, and this development's not going to add a significant amount of additional traffic to that. Also, schools are going to be concerned, overcrowding of schools. These types of developments don't add. Our target will be for young couples, military, retirees, and similar developments have approximately 1 child per 13 units, whereas a single family dwelling will have about twice that amount of density of children. So it's reasonable to assume that there won't be a significant influx of children in the school system due to this development. The third issue I want to talk about is the property value. A lot of adjacent property owners may be concerned that their property value will decrease because this is an R75A zoning. And I know for a fact that this is going to be a very high-end development. And what I mean by that is there will be lots of amenities, including a pool house, sidewalks. We want to keep a high emphasis on aesthetics. We want to keep a natural buffer around the property. and we want to really incorporate this development with the one that's ongoing across the road. And finally, crime has been an issue that has been brought up. The concern of rental units statistically having a higher rate of crime. Well, it's just simply not true. And the management agency that's going to be operating this development has an extremely high screening process, and they look at income, they look at employment, they look at credit history, they look at background, they do a background check. And in this case, if they have any issues with a tenant, they can simply remove them from the property. Whereas the current R100 zoning, if there's any issues with a single family house, then they're essentially just stuck with what we've got. So in summary, we're requesting the rezone from R100 to R75A, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. All right, we will now move to staff and any information they might have concerning the project. Please include any information about the that you think we may need to know.
Mr. President, Council, what you see before you is the Hunley rezone. Just to reiterate what that is 32 acres that are going to be split, and then they're going to be divided into 12 acres is going to be B3 and 20 acres is going to be R75A. Just to kind of explain what a rezone is to you and to the general public, the rezone will just change the use permitted in that area. This does not set any kind of development standards. This does not approve any kind of site plans. This does not approve any kind of preliminary plat or anything else like that. The city has safeguards in place for that, because just because you approve this zoning, they will also have to come through the planning commission for anything that they're wanting to build in that area. So for the R75A, they'd have to come forward preliminary plat, and in that process, they would have to address any issues that we see with the development, such as safety concerns, such as traffic concerns, or buffers, anything like that. They would have to come for us. There's a screening process for that. So we work very closely with them to make sure we get this right. We make sure that this is the right development for the city. Same thing with the business, the B3. Anything that comes in there has to go through a site plan process, which has to go through the planning commission, which will then have another public meeting for that. So anything that's going to go right there still has multiple steps it has to go through. So all you're doing right now is approving the zoning for that area. So if you turn your attention to the TV, you'll see that there's the present zone right now, that's R100. And then the proposed will be changing that R100 to B3 on that top edge, and changing the bottom section to the R75A. I blew up some of the zoning map that we currently have so that you can see what's around it. Currently it's all zoned R100 in that area, but then right across the street you see B3, you see TH2. Up on that area, up to the right hand corner, you'll see a PUD, which is a PUD development, which is basically a mixture of business and residential, which is what this would be, just within our official zoning districts that we have. This is a satellite image that just highlights the area. The areas are rough. They were not done by a GIS standard or anything like that. It's just kind of giving you a general area where it's going to be at. So that way you can see what's going on. You see Hunter Hill development to the right side of it. You see the PUD development to the right-hand corner. And then you see the R100 developments to the left-hand corner and off of Dolphin Street. So you see that area, and so what we've done is we've looked into this zoning to see what would be best for the city. Staff supports this zoning being changed to the B3 and to the R75A. We found that it aligns with our comprehensive plan that we currently have. It will also align with the comprehensive plan that we are having rewritten by KPS. Like I said, the adjacent zones are R100 and B3, so the continuous zoning, continuous business, continuous residential. And then also we've reached out, like I've said, to our city consultant, KPS, who are writing our our new long range plan. They approve and they think that the uses in the area that are being proposed are appropriate for that area. You have any questions?
Any questions for Thomas? All right, thank you, Thomas.
Sir.
All right, we will now allow one at a time any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the project, including any specific concerns that they feel the council should take into consideration. So if you could raise your hand if you would like to speak. Okay. Please approach the microphone and tell us who you are, even though some of us know who you are.
I'm Premilia Cersei, and I'm going to say practically the same thing I said to the Planning Commission. I live on Red Cliff Circle. I've lived there for 44 years. But in the last few years, our neighborhood has become multi-generational. We have young couples, and it's wonderful. It's a vibrant neighborhood. And one of the draws to this neighborhood is the fact that there's 2 schools on Dolphin Street, and they can walk to those schools. And you know the traffic on Dolphin Street is not great, but if you add that many people, and you know, Mr. Boyd talked about only adding a few children. That's not the problem. It's the number of people and the number of cars that will be on Dolphin Street. When I came here tonight, I wound around Holly Hill and everything to keep from going down Dolphin and getting on the Ozark Highway, because where Dolphin meets Ozark Highway, and I'm an old math teacher, it's not a 90-degree angle. And to try to turn right when they're turning off Porter Lunsford Road left, they're going to run over me. So I go down Holly Hill and around. So that's not going to change. You know, even if you put a turn lane, there's still going to be you're still going to have to turn less than a 90-degree angle there unless they redo the whole thing. And the traffic is just going to be more than I think needs to be there with children walking up and down. There's 2 schools on that street. And that was the most wonderful part of living there. My kids walked to school or rode their bikes. And I want the next generation and the next generation to be able to do that. And I think we should respect older neighborhoods and keep them vibrant instead of making it dangerous for children. And that's my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Cersei.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Cindy Hundley. In April, my husband Tony and I became aware of the concerns for various community members, like Mr. Boyd went over, school overcrowding, the traffic, and decreased property values. So I did quite an extensive internet search to educate ourselves on the validity of these concerns. Found a great article from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University. As far as schools go, the multifamily housing developments have smaller homes and therefore oftentimes less children or no children, because they're mostly occupied by single people or young adults with no children or very few children. So there would be little impact on the schools. As far as traffic goes, study from the Institute of Transportation Engineers has shown that multifamily home dwellers on average have fewer vehicles and make less trips per household. Sometimes the difference they reported was anywhere between 40 to 80%, depending on the time of day and what the week was, what day of the week or weekend. Property values. The fear that housing density will hurt property values and primarily based on anecdotes. Research, however, has shown that multifamily rental housing does not cause property values to decline. In fact, quite the opposite is true, and property values of nearby homes often increase. In light of this information, we request that you approve the rezone.
Thank you, Ms. Hunley.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Andrus. I'm a high school teacher at Enterprise High School and a parent, and I live next to Pamelia Cersei on Red Cliff Circle. My concerns tonight are shared. I share Pamelia's concerns with the walking. My children will be walking to Holly Hill this year and riding bikes and all that stuff, but my concerns are the cars and where you're going to, if this does happen, because I feel like it might happen. If it does happen, I feel like there should be no access to this property from Dolphin Extension. I think it would make more sense for the access to the property to be on 27 because that would eliminate some of the cars. An acceleration, deceleration lane on 27 would make more sense to enter the property. We've been told that it would be on the back of the property. Even a access or maintenance entrance would not make sense to be on Dolphin Extension. Also, my other concern is the children. I don't think they're going to screen these families and say, you have children, so this isn't probably going to be the property for you. I think if they have children, they're going to be welcomed into the property if that's something that they want to have, especially with the amenities that were discussed, the pool and all that stuff. Kids would love that. So that is going to add more kids. And as a teacher, that concerns me because I just got my child's teacher list and her class, and there are 30 kids in my child's class. 30 kids is a lot of kids at Holly Hill Elementary School. And so if we're going to add more kids, that school's already busting at the seams. And as a teacher at the high school, I have 30 kids in my room, but I can handle that because I'm teaching home economics and I have the space. But I do know that Holly Hill does not have the space to add more kids. So it concerns me that my child might be in a class of more than 30 kids. And as an educator, that's concerning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Yes, sir.
My name is Scott Ferguson. I strongly disagree with some of the statements that have been made. I don't have a study to give to you, but I'm a lifelong resident of Enterprise from here. I remember when Apache Drive, those were new apartments, brand new, nice. You don't need a study to look at subdivisions off Dixie Drive and look at Valley Hills and know that there's a distinct difference in value and why there's a difference in value. They're the same age, but there's a difference in value. That's just how it works. It is a negative marketing factor, and there's nothing going to change that. And speaking of the traffic, do any of y'all remember the speed bumps and the rumble strips on Dixie Drive? We don't want that on Dolphin. And, there is a legitimate concern of somebody's child getting hit or killed, or an elderly person, or anyone, because we have sidewalks right on the road. It's too much. You're going to have multiple residents that live in these apartments. They are going to have multiple cars. Most people are two-income households, so I don't know how you're going to cut that trip in half. So I disagree with that also. High density development is not a cultural norm for us. There's a reason I don't live in Atlanta, Georgia, or a metropolitan area. There's a reason a lot of people come here, retire here, come back here, because they want to live in a small town. They appreciate the small town atmosphere. That's what they want. That's what's helped us grow and get to where we are now. It's too much. There are better places for this. And if these developers think that there's that much demand for an apartment complex of this size, and I promise you, they're not buying this land. They're not getting financing on this land without a plan. They already know what's going to go there. And it's going to be between 200 and 300 units. And it's too much, man. I mean, it doesn't fit us. It's just too much. There are other residential issues that we have. I'm a real estate appraiser, and there are other issues that we have here too. We have a shortage of existing homes. We may have a demand for apartments, but we have a shortage of existing homes. As of an hour ago, there are 57 listings in Enterprise, and they range from 38,000 to $1 million. You know, if they were to go in and put garden homes, that's what people want. You know, we marketed ourselves for years as a retirement community, and we did it successfully. I mean, geez, we're getting a VA hospital. We did something right. I mean, people are retiring here. I meet them all the time. And, you know, they would love to downsize from their larger homes in Valley Hills to a smaller home and continue to live in their community. There are agents that would love to sell those existing homes. There are families that would love to buy those existing homes because not everybody can afford a $300,000, $350,000, $400,000 new house. I mean, there's just not homes there for young families starting out to buy. That's just, you know, there are better locations to build in. You know, we are not so overbuilt here that this apartment complex has to go here. It doesn't have to go here. It can go somewhere else. If they believe in it, build it, they will come. That's just, you know, that's just the truth. And, you know, and there's other projects that are coming before you guys. And I just wish that we could have a mission statement, a growth plan that represents our values, our ideals, and how we want to live. And that's not high density. Like I said, you know, we were not trying to turn Enterprise into a metropolitan area. I mean, nobody wants that. No one wants that at all. And through this process, one thing I've learned, and it's sad to say, is apathy. People that I have known all of my life here, they're not here tonight. They weren't here for the zoning meeting. They're not going to be here. And I keep hearing it time after time. They're going to do what they want to do. They always have. They always will. Why bother? You know, but I'm here to participate, and I'm trying to share what, you know, my limited information and knowledge is. You know, again, it doesn't take a study to look at those subdivisions and compare the ones off Dixie Drive and Valley Hills. And then, two, the promises about professional management and maintenance. I believe that, and I believe it's well intended. Who's going to own this apartment complex in 40 years? These promises that are made here tonight will mean nothing. They can't be kept. You know, in 50 years, what's this apartment complex going to be like? How much of it is going to be HUD housing? I mean, look at Apache Drive. Look what's happened to those. I mean, I know I'm showing my age, but, you know, so be it. I mean, but it's just the truth. I mean, it is what it is, and you don't need a study. You don't. I mean, it's just a lot of this is common sense. I mean, and I realize, you know, these developers want to make money, but as homeowners, we're investors too. You know, we matter too, and collectively, you know, our investments in our homes, which is the biggest investment most people make in their life, is more than this complex, much more than this complex, and we should have some say-so into what's going to happen here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Amy Suter. I know some of you. And I also live on Red Cliff Circle with two of the other people that spoke. I did write my points down because I'll forget if I don't. So if you'll forgive my looking at my notes. My first point is this. The said community is dealing with the 32 acres that are to the right of Dolphin Extension. But what has not been brought up is that the same family owns 132 acres to the left of that community, of that Dolphin Extension. 51 of those acres are probably buildable, and they also are on the Ozark Highway, if you'll forgive my not the proper highway numbers, and Dolphin Extension. So it leads one to believe that potentially discussion has occurred between buyers and sellers that has not been brought up, but it will need to be brought up, and that feels a little bit deceitful because it's a package eventually. It will be a package. So that's my number one question or point. Of course, people have already brought up the schools, Holly Hill and Dolphin. I'm a former educator in Enterprise, and I can't say enough, our schools matter. That's part of what makes us Enterprise. And they are overcrowded. Secondly, the neighborhood that is already, it's aesthetics. I don't know if it's second or third. Third, aesthetics. Across the street from the said location, the same developers are building a housing unit now. Those housing units are cookie cutter. There's nothing special about those. It looks like it will be Lego kits put up that form nice looking houses, but the deal is it's cookie cutter. And we have to say no to these cookie cutter ideas. Cookie cutter developments in towns, they turn towns into faceless places that our young people flee. They will not return. Tourists avoid, and it decreases the pride that we have as residents. And I grew up here. I moved here at 2 years old. I did move away and have had the good fortune of living in other cities, but I also had the fortune of making the choice to bring my family of 5 back here to my hometown, and I'm so proud of it. And I want it to be the best it can be, and I can tell you it's really not right now. And how do we avoid this cookie cutter mentality in our own town? We plan, and we have a vision for the future. And maybe we do have a vision of the future for our town and how we want it to look and how we want it to be. But if we do, I don't know what that is as a resident. But maybe you do. Maybe there's a planner. Maybe there's a visionary that has not stepped forward, that is not a cookie cutter mentality. Abe Lincoln said, the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. We have to create our town now. I think we've reached the capacity within our city limits. It's time to start thinking with the land that we have left, what are we going to do with it? How do we want it to be? How do we want to be perceived as a city? And I can tell you it's not cookie cutter. When people that I know, when people that I know come in from out of town, I got to tell you, I can't wait to show them our school campuses. Everyone. I'm a substitute teacher, so I've subbed at so many of their schools. They're all outstanding. All 3 of my boys go to Enterprise High School. It's amazing. And I can't wait to show our friends the city park. Somebody had high expectations and high standards when they built and paid attention to our schools and our park. Our whole town needs to be that way. And I think it can be that way. Mark Twain said this, and I'm almost done. If you will, let me find that. We take stock of a city like we take stock of a man. The clothes or appearance are at the externals by which we are judged. Enterprise does not get high marks in many locations. Our park, A. Our schools, A. Our churches, our small businesses, that's who we are, but we're not cookie cutter. We're not the Atlantas, the traffic, and all that come with that. Saying no to bad development will get us better development in the end. But the biggest roadblock to better development is the fear of saying no. And you all have the good fortune of making that decision. I hope that you, as strong and intelligent leaders, will be willing to say no to this below average idea that does not meet our town's expectations or high standards. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Suter. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Hagans. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. You've heard a number of people speak tonight, most of whom have been my neighbors a long time. And you have heard the concern in their voices. And I think part of the concern comes from the problem that we really don't have
a defined project that we can look at. It's very hard to either support or oppose something that's just a generality. If we had drawings and population definitions or numbers of units or other things, it would be easier for us as lifelong residents to either be in support of something or in opposition to something. So that I would ask you to consider the possibility tonight that you defer your approval of rezoning until such time as existing longtime residents of Enterprise can see something that's more well-defined and form an objective idea of how that project will affect us. I'd ask your consideration in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Anybody else? All right. We'll now allow the applicants or the representatives to address any of the concerns that the general public brought that they feel were not adequately addressed in their opening comments.
Thank you, Dallas Board Engineering. I just wanted to point out a couple things, mainly as it relates to other apartments in the area and how they're maintained in the area, and especially those that we refer to off of Apache Drive. Those specifically have multiple owners. They're sold to people, and there's no plan, there's no HOA, there's no maintenance plan, whereas this development is not fractional ownership. It's got it's one owner. There's a maintenance plan in place. There's a managing agency in place to manage this, and I know for a fact that this type of investment would not be made to the city of Enterprise to have something like those apartments that those examples were made of. Also, just a side note, these same developers recently bought a 15-acre parcel that was zoned for apartments, and they've rezoned that for single family. And so they rezoned 15 acres in single family from apartments and are requesting to zone this 20 acres to apartments. So we'll have a net balance of 5 acres of apartments. So it's and it was just right off of Porter Lunsford Road. So there's going to be a net of 5 acres. Other than that, I won't go back through and readdress all the comments and concerns about those items. And I appreciate your time tonight.
All right, so we will now close the public hearing and we will move to council consideration of the ordinance. So council, you have before you ordinance 070522, which is the Hunley rezone. In order to discuss this, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
So is that a move to approve, to adopt the ordinance?
What?
That's a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt ordinance 070522. Do I hear a second? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, any comments, any questions from the council of the applicants? Had a couple of questions. If y'all don't have any. There were a couple of concerns brought forward. 200 to 300 units. Mr. Boyd, would you mind addressing, current, because that seems to be in conflict with other things that I'd been told.
Well, so the primary plan is a mini home village.
Mini homes.
Mini homes,
Yes,
correct.
right, the cottage style homes.
Cottage style homes, that's right. Now, as far as the exact number, layout,
And those are
specifics,
detached
correct
structures.
Correct. But as far as the actual number of units per se, we don't have those numbers detailed at this point. If we get rezoned, obviously, whenever we get into the design phase, we work with the city and the engineering department to nail down those numbers to make sure they comply.
Do you know approximately how many would fit on this 20 acres?
Well, as far as mini homes, I'd say about, and again, I don't want to nail down any numbers, but about 130.
Okay. All right, and then there was some insinuations that there was talks about. Is there any current plans? Not that it's really germane to this ordinance, but developing the property across the road.
As far as on the north side Dolphin Extension, there's no plans that I've been made aware of. No.
All right, those are the only questions I had. Does anybody else have anything for Mr. Boyd?
The road's leaving in. Is there going to be an entrance off Dolphin? I heard that during the planning.
Yes, there will likely be a Dolphin entrance.
And off 27.
Eventually. The Dolphin entrance will likely come first. And, you know, if everything's approved, the commercial phase is approved and begins to be constructed, and at that point, it'll likely be connected to the 27.
So all that traffic, Dolphin initially.
Correct.
For most of the park.
Correct.
A year or so.
Okay. Staff, do you have any opinion? Granted, that's not what we're, to kind of underscore what Thomas said earlier. We're not addressing plat approval. We're not addressing any of that tonight. This is just a land use. But since it's been broached, I mean, what?
I just want to remind you, Mr. President, of the process. The intent tonight is to set the general use of that property to be, for R75A and B3 zoning. And the intent of that is what does that property, what would it be used for? The process, that's our process with the city, is you set zoning, and then after that, they develop a plat and an engineering plan. And those plats come to the engineering office for review. That goes to Planning Commission for approval. Construction plans are also submitted. That's under review. And we will look at safety,
and those
traffic.
are public hearings, right?
Those are public hearings with the Planning Commission, yes, sir. But we'll look at traffic, safety, layout, density, all those things when we have a plat and an actual plan. What you have in front of you tonight is a rezoning for that general, what is that land used for? And I just want to remind you that Thomas said it, but we reached back out to KPS, which they're the experts when it comes to land use. Is who created our current long-range plan for the city, but they're also the company that we hired recently to update our long-range plan for the city. And we reached out to them about this particular development and asked, for general use, does this match? Is this a good use? And I don't want to put words in their mouth, and Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard them say was it's a compatible use, that this is an acceptable use for that type of property at that location. I did want to do one thing, which was I did have a conversation with DOT today, and that wasn't the cause of the call, but the conversation went to this area, especially that Dolphin Street extension in 27, and they said that they wanted to look also at the traffic inputs as well when we get to the construction drawing section of this project to see what the traffic would do at that intersection. So they're interested also once we get to the phase of design to see what needs to be done. And I just want to reiterate to you that the engineering department, staff department, we're very safety concern oriented, and we want to make sure whatever they propose that we can put forth a plan that would be as safe as possible.
Okay. Any other questions for Barry or staff? Does anybody have any further comments? Yes, ma'am. The public hearing's closed. All right. I had some comments if y'all did not have any. So, I say this every time that we have one of these hearings. This is by far the toughest thing that this council deals with on a recurring basis, primarily because we're growing. It's what I would like to call a good problem. They're not having a rezone hearing in Ozark tonight, I don't think, because they're not growing. So these are good problems, but they are problems nonetheless. I know I lose a lot of sleep over these decisions. I've lost sleep over this specific decision. One big reason is because I know a lot of you out there. A lot of you helped raise me. A lot of you went to school with me. A lot of you are friends of mine. So on the one hand, we have a property owner that wants to use their property as they say fit. A very American concept and it's a very enterprise concept of property rights. And on the other hand, we have a group of residents that think that the requested use will impact them in a negative way. And I think we should hear those concerns out. We should consider them very seriously. So I've met and talked with many of you in this room. I've met with many that are not in this room, and I'm certainly willing to meet with anyone in the future about this issue or about any future issues. And my phone's on the website, as are all of my colleagues up here. So we're very approachable and we're very easy to talk to. So while I'm sure I did not convince any of you that to change your position on the matter, whether you're for or against it, I think everybody's pretty dug in on it. I hope it was at least apparent that I take these decisions very seriously. I do my homework on them. I look into them. I have philosophical moorings that guide my decisions. I try to be very consistent on these things. So, I've heard the concerns about traffic, crime, blight, property values, school zones. I share these concerns. I share these concerns all over town. I've studied these issues at length. I've read the study that she referred to tonight. I've read many other studies on this. And I truly believe that the impact will be no more than what is the current approval or of an approval that many of you would be in favor of. We heard Garden Homes tonight, R65 more dense than it's currently zoned for. It is currently zoned for residential, which brings all of these other concerns. And I especially don't think, or I'm not convinced to the point that I'm willing to make the decision to deny somebody of their property rights, which is what we're being asked to do. I understand the concerns and the fear of the unknown. The reality is we have properties in town that need to be cleaned up. If you were here in the work session beforehand, if you've been in tune in previous work sessions, we all agree with you. We think properties do need to be cleaned up. We agree with you that we need a plan. We are working on a comprehensive plan. We have run this particular project as with all the other projects that we have being considered through our comprehensive plan. We need to clean up certain properties. I personally think we could do more, and we should be doing more to clean up our city. And, if you don't believe me, ask staff. They've been challenged very recently on that. We can use hypotheticals to make any future growth look like a bad idea. We can allow that. We can just allow it to us to call for a moratorium and no more growth because of these hypotheticals. But I personally feel that that's unfair to the responsible landowners, the responsible developers, and frankly, the people who need roofs over their heads. It was alluded to earlier that we have a housing shortage. That is a true statement. We need more rooftops. So for that reason, and I could go into detail on all these points. And I know some of you in the room know I can, because I'll keep you on the phone for 2 hours talking about it. But I'm not going to do that tonight. But I am in favor of this request. And I didn't say any of this to convince anybody to change their mind. I just want everyone to know that I take this serious, that it pains me to have to make these decisions, because there's winners and losers in it. And I am confident that if the development goes forward, if it is approved tonight, that many of these fears will not come true. Now, I have no crystal ball, so those are my comments. Is there anything else? All right, hearing no more discussion, I will call for a vote. We have a motion and a second to adopt Ordinance 070522, which is the Hunley rezone. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
All right, we have the motion is approved. Ordinance is adopted 4-1. All right, we'll now move on to public hearing and consideration of ordinance 070522A, which is the annexation and zoning of Howell. We'll allow the room to clear out. Give it just another minute to quiet down a little bit. All right, I will now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of 070522A, providing for annexation and zoning of 184.08 acres of land owned by Shang and Fay Howell into the city limits and to establish zoning of TH3 Townhouse District and Agric or AGRIC Agricultural District. All right, we're going to follow the same agenda that we did before. We've opened the hearing. We're going to call applicants, then staff, then any members of the public. Then the applicants will get a chance to rebut any of the concerns that they didn't previously address. Then we'll close it and send it to the council. So do we have Mr. Boland, you're going to represent the applicants. Please present the project and any known concerns.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thank you, council, mayor, staff. Thank y'all so much. Here, Tom was out of the country for this meeting. He apologizes. Do want to thank Miss Faye Stewart for being here. Shane was unable to make it. I was informed by her that he was admitted to a hospital with a stroke, so y'all please keep him in your prayers. Since our last presentation, as y'all are well aware, next month will be a whole year we've kind of worked on this project with you guys. We've presented to the council and the planning commission. Since that time, we've revised our plan to make it clear of our intentions and to provide several items requested of us. Here's a summary of those changes. We propose to divide the large parcel into two parcels, a west piece and an east piece. We will only be purchasing the eastern portion of the development. The existing landowners will maintain ownership of the western portion. We are and was directed that it was best to request annexation of both parcels while keeping the western parcel zone as Turner mentioned, currently agricultural, and the owner can continue the farming operations there, and the eastern parcel will be zoned to the TH3. And no smoke and mirrors with us, guys, because our plat's already been presented to Planning Commission and approved. It's with the stipulation that now no townhomes will be built on the site. So strictly just single family development, kind of identical to what's happening there, Bowlville Circle and 134 with the cottages there by Mr. Carter. We are proposing, since talking with everyone and with staff, to only develop the eastern portion of the property into the 139 single family residential lots. This is a reduction from the initial roughly 500 lots that were presented to staff. These 139 lots will reside on the roughly 72 acres, which equates to less than 2 homes per acre. Per the city's land use plan, 3 or less lots per acre is considered low density. As we were just hearing a lot of concerns from the citizens, we hope by reducing our density that it would be favorable to staff. We'd also had conference call with staff and with the consultants on this matter, and we feel like reducing the density would be a great compromise. We've also provided in the newest release additional 100-foot buffer along the north property line between our parcel and the airport site. It was brought to our attention that we would be touching the airport site, so now we have shifted that property down 100 feet. Had to sacrifice some lots, but we felt like, once again, it's a great compromise. This also will maintain the development's border with the VOR for Fort Rooker, so we're well out of their parameters there. The annexation and rezoning received favorable recommendations from the Planning Commission last month, as well as the subdivision plat was also approved. So as we heard earlier from some of the citizens, what's to be expected, we've already kind of put all those things out in front, and it's very evident and transparent what we plan on doing. As far as the staff concerns that we've heard those Planning Commission, but once again received a favorable compromise from those guys and favorable vote. We're not naive enough to think that we can stop any complaints of noise. It's evident in the city, goes on all over with the sounds of freedom that we have, also with the airport. But we hope it's evident with the landing subdivision directly across the street from us, with limited complaints there, that people are well aware when they turn on Airport Boulevard and to look at these home sites that they're going to be beside an airport. So we would hope that they would just have some kind of a nostalgia effect that they're living there by the airport and can see what transpires. Having my business property just around the corner from the airport, I sit out many a night just on the hill and overlook minimal aircraft at night. It's mostly traffic during the day, and I think that's going to also be an added plus for us. The staff shared their concern based on the consultant's recommendation. Well, we feel like if you pay good money for a consultant, no one's probably going to come out and openly recommend that a housing be built by an airport, but we feel like they're just doing their job. But also, too, we felt like having a conversation with them and reducing our density, that we've kind of achieved all the things they were looking for to make it seem like it would work a little bit better. The main takeaway that we have proposed for the development now, we feel like it doesn't interfere with any airport operations, and it does not create any safety hazards. I know that's one of the important concerns that we have with the development of the new Airport Zoning Commission, is that there be no hazards presented to the airport. It was brought to our attention as well that the city would have to maintain the county road. What we'd like to share on that, the city already operates a 7/10 of a mile from the circle up Aviation Boulevard to the stop sign. So it's literally just 2/10 of a mile to make the turn on County Road 622 to the landed development as well as ours. We're under the impression from the county that the city would only have to meet the requirement to uphold the road to where the subdivision start, or the property line. Additionally, as far as the road concerned, we feel like this is a natural growth process for the city, just like we were just hearing about the expansion of some more acreage for development. That's just part of the process of growing. Staff shared earlier about the sewage shortfall. We're excited that there's a spot for us to tie the subdivision on and to use something that was implemented by the city, and money was spent to tie on for these residents, unlike that was across the street. We furthermore, during this process of a year, had heard the Airport Zoning Authority had identified this property for industrial use. We know that's a general future use recommendation. It's not really a mandatory zoning. There was a map prior to that just showed hot spots of low density versus high density areas of residential. And once again, we feel like falling under the low residential area, that beside a creek, that it provides an environment for a nice community, green space area for the residents to enjoy. We've heard of shortfall of housing all throughout the presentations this evening. So we hope providing these rooftops will provide much needed revenue, tax dollars, and housing for our residents. Well, thank you all for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. All right, I'll now call upon staff for any information they might have concerning the project. Please include information about Planning Commission recommendations and staff recommendations.
Councilman, so again, just to reiterate what we're here for to set zoning for this development. This one is a bit different because Longleaf did present their preliminary plat along with this rezoning request. The preliminary plat has been approved contingent upon the rezoning request. If the rezoning request is to be approved, the preliminary plat would already be approved, and then it would be pushed into the construction phase. Of course, with that preliminary plat, we had a public hearing, sign was put up, public was notified through the paper and all proper means, so there's been a public hearing for that. If you'll put your attention on the TV, as you can see, you have what you presently have right now, and the reason why there's nothing to the left of that is because it's annexation. We have no property right there. We would bring in that 184 acres roughly, and a majority of that would be the 112 acres would be zoned that agriculture 1, and then I believe it is 71.85 acres would be zone TH3. As you can see, the surrounding zones for that are R100 and agriculture 2. This is an overhead satellite view of the development where it would be roughly, as you can see the landing to the right, you can see the airport above it, very close to it. And then as you
can you go back one page just a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The shaded area is just the eastern parcel.
And the shaded area is just a rough assumption of where the development will go in that location. Like I said on the other one, I didn't have any like satellite data to exactly put it on the map, but I wanted to give you guys a better.
But you think that represents the eastern the yes. residential portion that they're asking?
Yes, that will
not agricultural.
In that rough area right there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this is our AZ zoning map that was recently adopted by the city. As you can see in the purple area with the blue arrow pointing to it where the proposed development will go, that now adopted future land use map puts that area as appropriate use for light manufacturing, warehousing, R&D, business support services, offices, and heavy commercial. If you were to approve this request, that would be going against the map that has been adopted by the city for what we believe the future land use around the airport, around in that quarter-mile area, would be. Now, I think we discussed before, but for reiteration, if you do approve it, you're going to be bringing the land into the city limits when it's not already there, and then you're going to be setting zoning. So you can do that, but doing that would be going against the map that we have adopted. So staff finds that the annexation and zoning request to be contrary to the adopted planned future use restrictions for the AZ zoning that we have. This map was prepared by KPS. It was vetted through the Planning Commission, and then it was approved by this council. They went through extensive research to find out what the best use of that area would be, and they came to us with that light manufacturing for that area where this proposed development is at. So staff is against the rezoning of this property. Planning Commission did vote for this property in favor to be rezoned by 4-3 vote, but that was before this map was ratified by this council. So they voted with the current knowledge that they had, not what was perceived to happen. So I'm going to let Barry talk more about the airport consultants and everything like
that. Gentlemen, just to reiterate a couple things. One, Thomas talked about this is an annexation and setting zoning. So this is to bring property into the city limits to accept this property as in the city limits of Enterprise. And when you do that, you set zoning at that time. So you have annexation and to set zoning. As he talked about, we take this very seriously. Telling people what they can and can't do with their property, as you discussed, is very serious. We did reach out because we wanted to make sure that we were making the best recommendation from staff that we could. We reached out to KPS more than once and asked them what to do about this airport, as far as the land that's there and how do we use it. KPS's recommendation is to keep that quarter mile around the airport boundary as industrial, not residential. There's several reasons why they recommended that, but they're the ones that produced the map. They're the ones that presented it through staff, through Planning Commission. Planning Commission adopted this, gave it to y'all, and then y'all accepted that or approved that a few council meetings back. So that came from KPS. One thing that I wanted to say is, this is the second time that we've seen this package. The first time we had a lot of concerns about, because we had property right back in that agriculture, which really abutted the back of the airport property. I mean, literally the backyards of some of those houses or lots would literally share a fence with the airport property, and you would be looking right onto an active runway. The proposal that is put forth is a lot better. It gives buffer. It gives the housing farther away from the airport. However, it does go against what KPS recommends, and it goes against what the map that you've got here. I did want to reiterate, too, that we reached out to our airport consultant, Barge Design Solutions, and asked them about this project back when, and their answer was, and they put it in writing, was that any residential close to the airport is against a recommendation. Putting homes near an active runway is not a good idea, and not, in their terms, I think, if I get this right, not in the best interest of the city, is the way their letter was written. With the developer coming back and reducing the footprint, reducing and pulling farther separation away from the runway, I did reach back out to Barge and asked them, did this change their opinion? We had a conference call with Mr. Boland, and he and Todd as well, I think, was on that call. They said, look, it's definitely a better situation. That was their words, but still, they were not convinced that putting residential right next to an active runway is a good idea. They said that it's not good practice. The last thing I'd give to you was a call that I think most of y'all were copied on the email last week. We continuously get complaints about noise around the airport. And I want to remind you that currently the Southeast Alabama Regional Planning Office is doing a JLUS study, joint land use study, for land that abuts active airports and airfields and such. And part of that, in their presentation they gave to us several months back, the one example they showed of what not to do, the thing that we want to make sure we don't do, is they showed Sheffield. And they showed the encroachment of homes and residents around an active airport. And they talked about the fact that when you do that and people file complaints and noise complaints, that goes all the way to the Pentagon. And to protect what goes on at Fort Rucker and in our back door, and basically has a heavy hand in our economy and what goes on in the city, that's what part of that joint land use study is part of. And they pointed out that it's not just military Air Force bases, it's not airfields, it's also municipal airfields, just like the one that's on your screen. So I take it very seriously. The complaint I got last week was basically saying they ought to shut down all helicopter operations after 9 p.m. People are trying to sleep. That's not, we're not going to do that. And I had to explain that that's not the case. This is a municipal airport. It's open to the public. We're not going to shut down I-65 at 9 o'clock at nighttime. We're not going to shut down a public road at 9 p.m. We're not going to shut down an active runway in municipal airport at 9 p.m. But that's what opens us up to with complaints. I just want to cover that with a consultant because Thomas didn't have some of that background with those discussions. I want to make sure you had that, and then I'll answer any questions that you've got.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas mentioned about the map that we adopted. I want to be clear in my head that this is this in reference to that specific mile radius?
Yes, ma'am. So it's a state statute. Yes, ma'am. It's a state statute saying within 2 miles, the city has the right to zone within 2 miles of an active airport. And part of that was we reached back out to KPS, and you correct me if I'm wrong, reached out to KPS and asked them, how do we do that? And this map, which is reflected there, is the purple area is within a 1/4 mile of the boundary of the active airport. We set the zoning at industrial, and Thomas explained what those things were. Then everything from a 1/4 mile out to 2 miles would have no restriction from the city about what you do. That falls back all under county requirements for development. Did I say that correctly? Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you.
And that's the map. The map reflects that concept, and that map was one that you adopted and accepted in a previous council meeting.
All right. Which we'll get another opportunity to ask questions if something comes up. So thank you, staff. All right. We'll now allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the project, including any specific concerns they feel the council should take into consideration. Anyone here to address the council on this specific annexation and rezone? Or zoning, not rezone. All right, seeing none, I will now allow the applicants to address any concerns that the general public brought up or staff brought up that they feel were not adequately addressed in their opening comments. Would you like to?
Feel a lot better than that first round up here. Once again, we've had minimal opposition because we've been fully transparent with the whole project the whole time. What our intents are for the zoning, what we plan on putting there. Spoken with the adjacent landowners across the street. We have a development that's thriving. The landing, I think they're doing another phase. So far on the city's website, there's only one noise abatement that was documented just short of or just over a year ago of May 4th of 2021. That all deals with the northeast takeoff of the airport. Nothing that involves our property. It falls over the Tartan Pines development area. So I know we've got consultants making the recommendations on what can be built or not, but the landing seems to be a thriving project right across from us. I'm sure those guys that have built on 622 would probably frown upon the fact that the city's now going to try to take an airport. I don't know what year it was founded. I tried to Google it. I did not. But now try to push that more towards industrial use, and that would be right what they would be looking at across from them. So I just think the property is better suited for just small development that we're offering to do on the front of the park property. That still leaves another 100 acres back to hopefully be developed. Concord Airport currently covers 90 acres. I know there's plans to take over Moore County Road to the north of the property. Is that correct, with the airport expansion?
Yeah.
So that's going to be to the north. Understand right across from Bollweevil Circle, because of the expansion of the runway, y'all going to have to do some confiscation of land there, the Henderson property. Is that correct?
Well, confiscation certainly isn't the right word.
Condemnation. There you go. Of the Henderson property. So that's all to the east. Once again, not affecting our projects to the south. I know there was current farm property off Pistol Road that has been surveyed, which I would probably foresee that's going to be brought to you guys for development as well. So we feel like we're in great parameters of our subdivision to provide rooftops to the residents. So thank you again for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. All right, we will now close the public hearing, and before we discuss, we'll need to consider a motion and get a second. So I will entertain a motion to adopt Ordinance 070522A.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt Ordinance 070522A. Is there any further discussion, questions amongst the council members?
It said TH3, and you said there'll be no townhouses. Is that why then is the TH3 for everybody's understanding? Does that only fit their development better? Could it have been something else? Because that kind of leaves it open. Somebody asked me that. Said, well, it says TH3. There are going to be townhouses there.
I got you. So with our zoning districts currently right now, some developers decide to move down into that TH3 zoning. That way that they can have smaller lots, because currently the smallest single family residential lot that we have is an R65, which is an 8,000 square foot lot, 65 building width, so forth and so on. With TH3, we actually do have a caveat in our ordinances that allows them to build single detached townhomes or single family residence in that area. They just have to meet a certain setback requirements that are listed inside our ordinance.
And the preliminary plat that was approved are detached dwellings.
Yes, they'll be detached dwellings. The application that that Longleaf submitted had to caveat that no townhouses would be built on the property. So no like attached townhouses. They'd all be single family developments.
So, what we call townhomes is not, or what we think of as a townhome, where you have 0 lot lines or shared common walls, will not be allowed per the application that was submitted. Yep.
Yes.
And the approved preliminary plat.
And
Right?
preliminary plat, yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just, Mr. Boland did say that, he submitted in the preliminary plat with the rezone. That's not common, just to let y'all know, but that does show the intention of what they plan to build on that site. And they did, as Thomas says, declare in the preliminary plat there'll be no, attached townhomes. They're not 0 lot lines together. There'll be individual single family dwellings.
Similar to what's being built around, like
And
you
a small
indicated, on the
cottage,
west side
small-
of the circle. Over there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I try to be really, in my mind, I try to be consistent with, with my, decision as to what the commission recommends and what our staff recommends. And in this particular thing, the consistency I'm thinking about is that a vote, and I don't know if I can ask this, I just want to be sure. A vote for would basically, or I'm asking, that's not consistent with what we have previously voted for concerning that mile radius.
Okay, so kind of like backtrack and let's go through how we got here. All right, so we got the preliminary plat and the rezoning annexation, or the annexation set zoning request. It went through the planning commission. Along with that was the preliminary plat. When they went to the planning commission for this, the very next council meeting, and actually the council meeting that you read this request at, was the same council meeting that you, I believe was the same council meeting that you actually approved the AZ zoning map.
I believe you're correct.
Yes. So when the planning commission approved or voted to approve this development, it was with the knowledge that they did not have that AZ zoning map in place, so they were not going to go off that AZ zoning map. They were going to go off of what they currently had and not what they could have, because it was not ratified yet. We had no ordinance against it. We had nothing. So they went off of what they had at the moment. If this would have been the next meeting, I can't predict what they would have done if it would have been any different. But if they would have had that in front of them and it would have been this is not where it's going to go, that could have changed the vote. But that's the reason why you see a approved voting, even though we have this AZ zoning that says this is not where this should go. And this is why you have staff saying it should not be approved, even though the planning commission did approve it, just because that ordinance was adopted in between, the ordinance was adopted after the planning commission's approval.
Does that answer your question, son?
Yes.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm just going to say that, as an aviator for 30 years and flying all over the United States, all over the world, I've seen airports come up, and as a safety officer, I've had to deal with some of this. And we see what's already happened out at Shell Field. I'm worried that what may happen in the future, and with the development of folks coming to Enterprise to grow Enterprise, we've got a state, we've got a map, got a recommendation by Barge Engineering, KPS, not to do it. Noise complaints or not, we got medevac helicopters and airplanes that come in there in all hours of the day. I've seen other airports, smaller airports, people are crowding up around it. And then people are going, well, I don't want to settle there. I don't want to put my industry out there. We're trying to build that airport out there. We're trying to be good neighbors to Fort Rucker. And we need to remember that. And in my humble opinion, and everybody has an opinion, I'm not in favor of it. I wasn't at the Planning Commission. And in my own personal, I can't answer for the other folks at Planning, but I think the vote might have changed, but that's just me back then. But I really really look at this. I think about it a lot, pray about it a lot. I'm concerned about it, and I'm trying to think of the future of that airport and what we might have out there at that airport. What we could have. Will we ever become like a Dothan airport? I don't think so. Maybe not 10, 15, 20 years maybe. But industry that supports Fort Rucker, there's talks already of things moving from different places. And if we crowd that airport out there, some folks can go, well, I'm not going to move my business down there. I'll go somewhere else. You know, I'll go to Troy. I'll go wherever it might be. I'll just I'll just stop right there.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Anything else? I'll say this is probably one of the most difficult things, as Turner said earlier, is especially this one, balance of my absolute hatred to tell someone what they can and can't do with their property, as well as wanting to be sure we do what's best for the city and its assets. And so it's been something that this particular one has caused me a lot of anxiety trying to understand it. I guess my biggest question on this is, what long-term effect does this particular, as platted, as approved, does it have on our ability to do what we have planned with that airport? The extension of the runway is, if those houses are sitting there, is that going to prohibit, a 737 landing on that? People are not going to like the noise. I think it's crazy for somebody to move next to an airport anyway because they're not going to like the noise, but people do it all the time. I lived right behind Shell Field and got to the point that I never even heard the helicopters because I just became so used to it. But I also grew up under a flat line, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But other people that move there and then start complaining about it, I personally think that they should have paid attention where they moved before they started complaining. That's not a big issue to me, except for the fact that people do complain and cause an issue with the city and on up the chain. But my biggest concern right now, I guess, is will this or will it not affect our ability to use that airport as we see a long-range plan? I think that's my number one question here. Because if it doesn't, I'm going to have a hard time telling somebody what they can't do with their property. Anybody wants to answer it?
Well, no one's got a crystal ball, right? And there's nobody's gonna be able to give you a definite answer, yes or no. But I'll tell you, from developing airports for a long time before I came to the city as your engineer, I get a lot of, every time an industry wants to come to town, after is how long is your runway, all the necessary stuff, always in discussion they say, do you have a lot of noise complaints at your airfield? It always comes up 100% of the time, or if it doesn't, 99% of the time. They want to know. They want to know what the environment is for them to bring an industry, because if they're going to invest millions of dollars and brings jobs, they're going to be concerned. There is no current plan for a crosswind runway. It's not on the airport layout plan. There's no discussion with the FAA. But you never know. It's one of those things, as prevailing winds change, as traffic changes, as things change, the FAA can come in and say we ought to be looking at a crosswind runway. The crosswind runway, in my opinion, it has to. There's a process to go through for a crosswind runway. There's a justification, and there's an alternative study that's done about which angle and where should it be. But if it crosses that runway, the VOR will come into question about where is it and is Fort Rucker still using it, and then also all the adjacent properties, which could affect the cost for the airport growing more than what it is. If you're asking, is it going to impede what the airport is now? The answer to that, I think, is no, as far as who we are now. But as far as we grow, the more you have encroachment, the more you have homes, the more you have people living next to it, the more those properties become smaller and more dense, the more difficult it is for you to develop an airport. So we have a plan, as y'all know, to take it from 5,100 feet to 6,000. We've got about half of those properties secured. The rest of them are in court to get the rest of the property. The intention for that is it's not driven by the number of aircraft. It is driven by the number of large aircraft that are currently flying into the airport that have penalized operations, meaning that they can't, excuse me, they can't take a full load of fuel, they can't carry all their passengers, they've got to stop short of their destination and refuel. There's several things that go into that analysis. The FAA has accepted that justification study. They say that we're warranted for it, and it's a big endeavor. It's a $10 million type investment to do that, and FAA will fund at least 95% of that project. They believe that much into what we're doing and what's going on in this community and at that airfield. So to answer your question, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, but I do believe that the consultants that we asked, being KPS and Barge, they took this very seriously and they didn't make those recommendations lightly. And I don't think that really answers your question, but that's the best answer I can give you.
If I can make a connection in the Hundley property, we mentioned KPS. Their recommendation was it goes with the city development. Okay, KPS is saying no, not the better for the city. And I'll guarantee you that when Benny Keith built their plant out there, they probably looked around to see where the biggest airport was, because I've already seen their jet come in there a couple times. And with the extension, that means more can come into that area. So whether industrial right there at the airport, there could be other bigger industrial around the city. People with big airplanes are going to say, I'm coming to Enterprise because I can get in there. Nobody's complaining about it.
I was going with something in my mind went another direction, but those larger aircraft means more, they're typically louder. And part of the environmental assessment that was done back in 14 or 16, I'd have to pull the date. They did an environmental study for what the noise analysis would be at that point as part of the EA. So, what the noise is today, I just want to remind you that won't be what the noise will be after this extension. The noise will change and aircraft change. And the composition of rotary wing versus fixed wing will change. So I don't have a crystal ball for you, Councilman, about what would it do and not do. But that's what I do know.
Mr. Boland, look like you, if y'all don't mind, allow Mr. Boland to respond.
Pull the drawing back up of the property. So you've got a barrier, right there. That's just the perfect one right there. So you see where we're situated to the south of the to the runway, and the future expansion is going to be running this way and to the, that's correct, east and west, which shows all the sound. We had the documents and we found out later that they were not accurate, but shows all the sound was traveling east and west because of the aircraft flow. There's Blanket Creek running right across below our property there. So the fall of the land would probably prohibit, Tom, my partner, is an engineer guru, big drop. So you would not probably ever foresee, and a great point by Barry about the VOR, we were willing to sacrifice 12 acres of our property, which we were paying over $100,000 for, just to respect the boundary for the VOR. Whereas currently on the airport site, there's a hangar sitting within the parameters of that. So we know you can't go that way. So we're just saying by giving up the 100 acres, if there wants to be industrial, we know there's an industrial park at 167. That airport is set there. There's no industrial use there. There's hangars. But if you, there are really our buffers. So if you started expanding this way, we've got hangars between us and the VOR and the airport. So we feel like we fall out of the zone of anything that would be impeding on the airport, to answer your question, Greg. And to say what Turner said about hypothetical, I mean, we could sit here and say, oh, we'd like to be like Dothan or Montgomery, but let's face it, that's back 100 acres will be left off there. We're up to the front right in the red. So you see where the back of the property, and I get that. If it would have been approved to start with, we would have been touching the fence of the airport and right in the line where the expansion was going to go. So we hope that we've answered all your questions and concerns about limiting our development just to that front south portion of it for the 72 acres. So thank you.
I would like to make one comment, and we said this in the planning too. Is noise goes all over; it just doesn't go up down the runway. I can ask my fellow aviators to say the same thing. I mean, out at Matson Range, it's fire, and 20 miles away you'll hear it. So noise is going to go all over, not just east and west. Okay.
All right, council, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 070522A. We're still discussing it, so certainly welcome to any further comments, discussion, questions, deliberations, anything. All right, hearing none, like I said, we have a motion on the floor to adopt ordinance 070522A. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
All right. So just to be clear, so motion passes 3-2. We will move on to public hearing and consideration of ordinance 071922, which is the 2020 redistricting. We'll now recognize Scott Farmer, representing Southeast Alabama Regional Planning and Development Commission, who will present an overview of the proposed city enterprise redistricting plan.
Good evening. Thank y'all much. We're going to start off kind of basic, just going over kind of where we got to this point. After each decennial census, governments with single-member districts, which includes Congress, state legislature, several cities and counties, had the opportunity to review the census numbers and how they interact with current districts. And so there are certain bounds of which districts are supposed to kind of be in. And so it don't matter if you've grown as Enterprise has or not, patterns shift within a city. And so that's what you have to look at. In y'all's case, there's 5 districts to look at based on the city's 2020 population of 28,711. You divide that by 5, you get 5,742. And normally courts have allowed up to about a 10% disparity between your highest populated district and lowest populated district for local governments. And so whenever y'all wanted us to look at the numbers, there was about a 27% disparity in your current districts. So therefore, the recommendation is to go forward to bring those districts back into compliance. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And so this is one of the areas that we were looking at on putting that in compliance. And some of the ways to look at is, of course, if you're overpopulated, you have to take some away. If you're underpopulated, you have to add more too. So what we knew we had to do as part of this process is for District 1, needed to add a minimum of 336 people to get within population compliance. District 4 needed to add a minimum of 70 people. And District 5 needed to subtract a minimum of 630 people. So what we also want to do as part of this is keep incumbents in your districts. Of course, keep in mind this will be in place for the next local election, which will be 2025. So whatever you do adopt will likely be in place for the next 2 municipal elections, 2025 and 2029, before the next census 2030 comes out, which y'all should have the opportunity to review, or whoever's in these seats to review before 2033 election, unless the state changes those cycles. So normally my philosophy in doing this over the last 2 decennial censuses is as least changes as possible to get you within compliance. That way you affect the least amount of folks, and it just don't change a whole lot. Of course, we work for y'all in this case, and so take your feedback on what we need to do. And also another key issue that we want to look at as well is District 1 has been a majority-minority district. So we want to make sure that that was maintained as well. So all of these goals that we have looked at have been reached as part of this plan. And so I could go more into it if y'all need me to, but this kind of gives y'all a little framework of where we are and what's going on in the state code. provides the way to do this. And of course, y'all have advertised this. We're doing a public hearing. And so upon adoption, then there will be another ordinance that has to be put out in the local paper and filings with the probate judge. But plenty of time to do that before the next election. But that's where we are.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. We may have questions later. We'll save those for after the public hearing. So I'm going to now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of Ordinance 071922, providing under the authority of Section 114623 Code of Alabama 1975 to adjust the borders of council districts for the City of Enterprise as described and approve the district boundaries outlined in the proposed redistricting map referenced as Plan 1. So this public hearing is now open. We'll follow the same basic agenda we have previously tonight. We've already had the introduction by Mr. Farmer, so we'll skip straight to staff. Any staff comments? Rayner, would you mind, just because of the subject matter, I want to make sure we've got a.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Farmer and Ozzie, knowledgeable about the subject, which he's very knowledgeable. He's very responsive and committed, so I really would like to say his efforts are very much appreciated.
Okay, and you're confident in that we've followed the letter of the law?
Yes, I've looked at the data and the map, and I would recommend that the council approve.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff comments? All right, seeing none, we will now allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to this ordinance, including any specific concerns that you feel the council should take into consideration. Anyone from the general public? Yes, sir.
Sir, Mayor. Robert Schmidbauer. I'm in Henderson Street. I live right here on a little dead-end street off of Pinehurst. And there's two houses on that street.
Speaking of the microphone, please.
Henderson Street is split by a creek. They never built the road because they never wanted to build a bridge because it's all swamp and it couldn't support it. It would cost too much. We understand that. So I've been split from my access street by councilman. So my neighbors have had one councilman. I've always had another. When we have common issues or issues, we can't go to one person. We have to go to two separate people, which creates two people trying to work the same issue. Oftentimes might not even know until you have a meeting or they bump into each other or a conversation. Right behind my house is a creek that runs parallel to Pinehurst Street. And I know you were trying to use creeks or streets as the natural boundaries. And at least in my situation for my street, I think if you use the creek, it would alleviate a lot of the problems that my neighbors have, and it would help alleviate the split of my street that only has two houses on it and it's not connected because of the creek.
Okay. All right.
So just a little more consideration. And that's not just my street, that's just an example. Most of these streets, the left side is one councilman, the right side's another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have neighbors that talk in issues, it could create possible issues for a councilman unless you all start talking a lot more, which I know a lot of you have full-time jobs and you're working a lot of long hours. But it would just alleviate a lot of the issues, and two of you's working the same issue that you may not know until you get together.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to voice their support or opposition? All right. Seeing none, Mr. Farmer, would you mind addressing those concerns if you have any?
Of course, whenever we're looking at these, we have to go by what the census block boundaries are, which are set by the U.S. Census. And so they normally do follow streets or streams or railroad tracks and things like that. And of course, in a lot of areas, it is divided by the street. So you do have one side of the street is going to be a different district than the other. But sometimes some streams aren't reflected on the census block boundaries. So we try to follow where we do. And sometimes there has been, we found where there's been platted streets before that have not ever been developed. And so it does go through certain properties. And I know whenever made attention to, sometimes that has been changed. But I don't know if there's ever going to be perfect with that, and I know that there's a lot of cases where it is split by streets, but a lot of times a street is the, I guess, most expedient way to go through there, just because of maybe that's where the district, the census block boundary is. And I mean, it's one of those things to where I don't know exactly where this one is and what it would impact. Of course, once you start impacting one block putting over into a district, it could make other changes as well. And I mean, it's one of those things to where that would be up to y'all to, if y'all want to further examine that or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we will now close the public hearing. We are considering Ordinance 071922. So I will entertain a motion to adopt Ordinance 071922. And if we get a motion in a second, we can go into discussion. So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, comments, deliberations? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Sonia,
okay.
Please.
This is not a comment, in opposition of what Mr. Farmer has presented us. It is odd. Eugene and I have this issue of he's the representative from one side of the street and I'm the other. We haven't had any problems with it per se. We just tell the citizens who they need to contact, and if it's something controversial when it comes on the table, I think we've done a good job with that. But I do want to ask a question for some streets that's like that. I don't know how to pinpoint a specific area to you to demonstrate, but it doesn't seem necessary. Like for he to be the representative on the side of the Raw Street where the cleaners is, and I'm on the, it just doesn't. Some of the areas don't make sense in that regard where it's the same. It's nothing that would make it. It doesn't make sense to me why that would be, and I just want to kind of. I'm asked it a couple of times randomly, why is that? But
yes, ma'am. And remember, one of the goals we have is to try to maintain District 1 as a strong majority minority district. Right. And so, because your district was the least populated district, we had to add the most people to you. I took extreme prejudice, so to speak, in terms of making sure the population was added, kept the district as strong majority minority as possible. And so I pretty much went around your whole district and any adjacent census blocks to see how that would impact the percentages, proportion of population within your district. So yeah, there was a lot of changes between 1 and 2 in that general kind of southwest downtown area because of you go from block to block to where one block might be 95% white and the next block would be 86%, Black African American. So that's one of those cases to where, yeah, some of that don't make a ton of sense because I would, much prefer and it look cleaner if that was just blocked out better. But in order to try to keep District 1 as a majority minority district, I had to kind of shift some of those districts between y'all's two districts. And so that's why that is, and that's why it's not as clean and congruent as it would be because of the racial impact of what those changes would be and the differences between 2010 and 2020.
Thank you.
I understand the impact of a person on one side of the street being in one district and a person on the other side, well, like Sonia and I, District 1 and 2. But I don't see how you could lay out 5 districts and not have a boundary line somewhere that people on one side of the street are going to be in a different district than the other.
Right. If you went just straight by creeks and things like that, there's not that many places. And also, depending on the neighborhood, and again, between 4 and 5, it was really difficult to take a lot more out of District 5 because once you get into Dale County, how those census block boundaries are, you've got some large blocks in there that have hundreds of people on one census block. You make one change, that's potentially 2,000 people you got to move. So it does make it difficult where certain boundaries are. And again, none of this is perfect. Again, the goal was to try to make as little changes as possible to maintain what y'all had. And so, this is to say that what was built on 20, 30 years ago might not have been the best way to do it. However, I've tried to be really conservative on what I try to recommend to local governments to do. And so because of the number of streets versus the number of creeks, it does make it difficult to, where there are going to be those boundaries and all. So it's just, this is not a, necessarily a fun thing to try to do, so to speak. It's fun to look at the numbers and all, but there's always going to be some compromises that have to be made in order to, and again, with 5 districts, there's always going to be boundaries, and those boundaries might not work exactly the way that y'all or the citizens want it, but hopefully this is overall a good, recommendation for y'all.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty and I have shared 5 and 4 have always shared, and of course Greg and I share. Greg and mine are cleaner. Where Scotty and I, it often runs down the road, and I can't imagine. I mean, the lines have got to be somewhere. The lines have just got to be somewhere. So I mean, while I understand the concerns, I'm sure there's hundreds of people around town that wonder the same. I just think it's going to be impossible to address every single little. I think we got to. What are the priorities? Well, the priorities were what Mr. Farmer listed, and that's we got to stay in the district. Majority minority in one, and balancing the districts within the confines of the law, right? And then trying to make common sense moves to make it. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. I mean, granted, I didn't look at y'all's districts. I looked at mine and how they interacted with the other two. But I mean, I'm supportive of this. I would be worried that any attempt to stop it, to fix this thing, we re-advertise, do all this 6-8 weeks down the road. Now we're back. Are we going to stop it again to fix one other thing that gets discovered, and then go through it again? And 2 years from now, we're just trying to, we're trying to get perfect here. So that's my take on it. I'm certainly respect anybody else's opinion. Anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt Ordinance 07-1922. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to new business. We discussed this in the work session prior, along with all of these new business items we discussed prior, so this should move pretty quick. I introduced and called for consideration of a request from Billy Powell, Director of Community Services and Recreation, to authorize the mayor, upon consultation with the city administrator and city attorney, to enter into an agreement with Pea River Historical Society Incorporated for the relocation of the Little Red Schoolhouse building owned by the Historical Society to city-owned property located behind the Depot Museum on Railroad Street. I entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now introduce and call for consideration of a request from Barry Briggs, Community Services Coordinator, to purchase an NSS Stallion 818 SC 18-inch contained carpet extractor and upholstery kit. That sounds really cool. For use at the Enterprise Civic Center from Enterprise Paint and Janitorial at, I think that's Paper and Janitorial, is that not? It's either Enterprise Paint Industrial or it's Enterprise Paint, Paper and Janitorial. Which one, Billy? Okay. Enterprise Paper and Janitorial at a total cost of $3,708.71. I'll entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now consider board appointment for library board. I'll call for nominations to the Enterprise Library Board, seat 4, for a 4-year term beginning August 8, 2022 and ending August 7, 2026. These nominations are now open.
At the recommendation of the library board, I would like to appoint Ovita Carey.
All right. Clarification, that would be a nomination, right? So
Nomination.
Yeah.
I'm not appointing. I'm sorry.
yeah. So Eugene has nominated Ovita Carey. Are there any further nominations? All right, hearing none, I will now close nominations and entertain a motion to approve Eugene's nomination of Ovita Carey to Enterprise Library Board.
So moved.
Second.
Everybody getting a little punchy up here. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve this nomination of Avita Carey. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mayor, you have a report for us?
Recreation, aided on the youth baseball, all-star team, district champ, state champ, competed for 12 teams, girls volleyball league, 99 participants, 3rd through 6th grade. Season to begin in September. Total participants last year, 97. Flag football league, 261 participants, the ages 5 through 12. Season to begin in September. Tackle football league, 139 participants, the ages 7 through 12. Season to begin in September. Total 400 participants in football, up from last year, 313. Currently in need of volunteer coaches, flag football, and volleyball. Special programs and events. Pickleball groups and free play are now available at 2 locations. MHO Brown Recreation Center and at Nelson Park, where we converted from 4 courts to pickleball. There are reservations that we can promote with anywhere from 8 to 18 players for a reservation. Engineering department. Single family detachment, 7 people, $4,455,300. Single family residential addition, $95,400. New commercial, $1,258,000. Nuisance property, investigated 31, verbal contact 3, notification failed 29. Properties blocked from progress 9, properties mitigated 36, irrigation and progress 10. Water department, there were 30 new construction water meter services installed in the month of July. New bypass tank is about 99% complete. Main Street, a new welcome to downtown sign is under construction in the parking lot located behind the OES apartment building. We estimate it will be completed by mid-fall.
Ms. Sonia?
I know that the room is emptied with all the citizens that came to express their, I guess their against opinions about the ordinances tonight. And rarely do I leave this council meeting highly vexed about anything since I've served on the council. And rarely do I openly defend decisions, but I am going to just make a little statement about one of the gentlemen stated how citizens often say, well, why bother? They're just going to do what they want to do. Now that irks me just a slight bit to make a comment about it, because I can speak for Sonia, and I can speak for these other gentlemen up here, that we don't just get up here and just do what we want to do. There are a lot of times when there's a lot of anguish about what we have to do and how we should do it. We really have tried to consider the citizens in our city, and just about, even if it seems minuscule to the citizens, it can sometimes be difficult for us. So I would definitely talk to anyone about that our goal is to operate in the best interests of our citizens. And some decisions aren't easy, but they're certainly not made without due diligence, and they're certainly not made without the proper application of intelligence and common sense as well. So we don't just arbitrarily do things and don't care. It is very it's tugging sometimes. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. But like I said, I know I'm preaching to the empty room, but y'all will go tell it. It'll be on the website. So thank y'all for coming.
Eugene?
I agree with Sonia 100%. We do not take these votes lightly, and I know sometimes we offend some of our friends, but we have to take it seriously and vote our conviction. And I would thank everybody for coming tonight.
Greg? I'd like to tag on to everything they've said, and we don't take these decisions lightly. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of thought. I've gotten in my truck, driven out to these various locations to look at them, made phone calls to Barry, made phone calls to various people within the city, talked to the developers, tried my best to get a true understanding of what was going on, but yet my underlying belief is that unless there is a very extreme, compelling reason, I cannot, in good conscience, tell someone what they can or cannot do with their property. And so that's where I always have to land if there's not a good, compelling reason to vote different than that. So something was said earlier as well about that we don't want enterprise to grow. Well, if that's the case, then probably in 2025 y'all need to clean the slate up here and vote in a different council, because this council has, I think, proven to be fairly pro-growth, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Don't want to offend anybody, but y'all put us here, and that we stated what we were when we were campaigning. So that's all I'm gonna say tonight.
Scotty? Yeah, and I agree, Sonia, with all that. I've had folks that tell me different things, and I say, look, you've got 3 minutes privilege of the floor. Come up, talk, stand in front of that mic. You'll be on the video. You'll be recorded, and say what you say. We want to hear it all, so come tell us, Yes, it's tough decisions that we make, but we've got to think of all our citizens in the town. But, if you don't come up here, you just gripe on Facebook or other places, I'm sorry. There's a microphone. You can come up and tell us what you think, and we'll consider it. The other thing is on Miss Evelyn. I've known her since she was just a little girl. And I'll tell you, that feat that she made up there in Fargo is the premier wrestling for the nation. This year, they went up to over 6,000 wrestlers, and the ladies, went up to over almost 1,500, a 44% increase. So to get 6th in the nation amongst those ladies, and she's just a sophomore this year, wrestling against young ladies older than her, it's quite a feat. Not only 2 state titles, one the very first state title that Alabama had for ladies, but also a second one, and now that one. And she's won tournaments in Georgia and Florida and other places. She's going to go far. And I'm just so proud of her and the family. And not only in that, but in soccer. She'll make All-American soccer one day. She's just that good in both sports. But again, thank you for coming. Thank you for all those citizens that are online. And thank you to our wonderful staff here at Enterprise. We couldn't do it all without you guys and gals. Thank you.
Yep. Again, ditto everything that's been said. I don't think I disagree with any of that. I do think I owe staff and Scotty and Sonia at least an explanation on the airport zone. As was stated, I don't know if it was understood by everyone, but that this was a compromise. It was we denied them what we denied them several months back. I felt like they came back with a much more reasonable approach. I share the concerns that were spoken. Like has been said, we're dealing with crystal balls and hypotheticals, and I have those concerns. But I do think the buffer, the reduction from 500 to 139 homes, the fact that it's in a low-lying down, the chances of it ever being developed into airport property, I did not see it. Now, again, we don't have that crystal ball, so I appreciate everybody's positions on it, and I hope that it does not cause us problems in the future. To Greg's point, we're very pro-growth, and it's going to be hard to change our mind on that. But we're also pro smart growth. We're working on a comprehensive plan actively. We're using that as a lens at which to view these things through. So, you know, sometimes I wish that we had the crowd we had tonight every night, and then, you know, they would see the discussion, the work, not just at voting meetings, but at work sessions, at strategic planning sessions. You know, when we're in the grind, I feel like all anybody sees is the 11th hour. You know, it's the last minute, and nobody realizes there was tons and tons of thought and preparation, discussions, both behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and they don't see all of the angst, the pain, the discussions, the deliberations that go on before we ever got here tonight. So we'll close with that. I think our next meeting will be a little shorter, and we will be back in 2 weeks. Y'all have a good evening.